Okay, councillors. Well, we've got a clear quorum in attendance, and it's just ticked over to 6:31, so I'll commence the meeting. Before I do, can I just ask Councillor Drury and Councillor Hesse, can you hear me okay?
A little muted, perhaps.
There's some echo there, Darcy, but otherwise come through loud and clear on this. Cheers.
Okay, let's see how I go. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and paying my respects to their elders, both past and present. Are there any apologies for tonight, councillors? Everybody's in attendance, I believe. No apologies. We'll move on to the notice of webcasting. For the benefit of the citizens who've registered to speak tonight, we'd like to let you know at the beginning of the meeting that in accordance with the Local Government Act, we do broadcast these proceedings, so your comments do have legal ramifications and are in the public domain. Disclosures of interest tonight, councillors. Any disclosures?
Yes, I've got one, Mayor.
Councillor York?
I need to disclose a significant but non-pecuniary interest in item 16, which is the Tempe local area traffic management, due to a close relative living in the area directly affected. So just for an abundance of caution, I'll not participate in that decision.
Okay, no problem. That's very simple. Any other disclosures? If not, I'll move the acceptance of Councillor York's disclosure, seconded by Councillor Drury. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. I assume no one's against that. Excellent. We'll move on to the moment of quiet contemplation. I'll ask you all to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of November. Does anyone have any corrections or clarifications to those minutes? No? Excellent. Well, Councillor Hesse will move their adoption, seconded by Councillor Kiat. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Mayor.
Yes?
Yes, it's Councillor Passes. Good evening. I tried to get through. Page 12 of the minutes. I'm pretty sure I did not vote against that motion. I think I asked questions. It was about the West Connex blasting.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have voted against finding another way to tunnel without destroying people's homes.
Okay. Well, should we amend the record to record that?
Yep, I was for the motion.
Okay. I'm sure Councillor Hesse and Councillor Kiat have no problem with that. That's incorporated. I'll put that. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. Next item, public forum. Councillors, we've got a number of registered speakers tonight, and I'll just take a moment to go through all of the items for which there are registered speakers. Item 11, notice of motion to rescind. Item 3, adoption Leichhardt Park Plan of Management. Item 16, Tempe local area traffic management. Item 25, notice of motion support for ratifying the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Item 31, Globe Wilkins tender. And that is it. So just for the benefit of the registered speakers, our code of meeting practice allows for speakers in the public forum to speak for 3 minutes. We do try to keep to that time because there's a lot of business on the agenda, and if you're the last person to leave tonight, you wish that everybody else had stuck to time. So I'll let you know if you do go over your 3 minutes, but if you could give us your maximum level of cooperation to keep it succinct, that would be terrific. So the first item, item 11, there's the first registered speaker is Jason Smith of Lilyfield. Jason, are you there? Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here, yes.
Okay, we've got you now.
Can you see me? Yep. Okay.
Please proceed.
All right. Okay, I'll start right now. councillors, I, along with many residents and users of this park, strongly oppose council's plan to tear up this lovely, much-used area of natural green space and replace it with a skate park. I would love to see a well-planned skate facility in the right location. Our family skates and scooters. This one here cost me more than my first car. This is neither the right location for a skate park or the right plan. If you've been to Leichhardt Park, you'll know that its character lies in the open green space and views to the water. It's an area where people come to seek respite from the more concentrated areas of the inner west. This type of passive green space is vitally important to the health and well-being of the community. If we've learned anything from COVID, it's that when everything is locked down, when all the gyms and the sporting facilities are closed, all we have left to turn to is our green space. And once it's gone forever. This small park is the last area of usable green space in the immediate area. It is often used for picnics and family gatherings. You will see people literally clinging to the shade in this area, seeking respite from the sun. The Leichhardt Plan of Management identifies this as a heritage landscape area. This development does not in any way fit with the natural features or character of the park. Residents of Morton Street, whose properties back onto this area, were never notified or consulted prior to the selection of the site in 2018. It was inadvertently disclosed during an on-site meeting with council about another issue. Following that, I've spoken to many residents and park users, not one of whom were aware of the proposed skate park. Following that, 133 residents and park users had signed a petition strongly opposing the skate park at this location. If we go back to the original motion on the 30th of October 2018, the council proceed to undertake community engagement on the development of a skate park facility adjacent to Leichhardt number 3. The community consultation on the location of the skate park never occurred. Council did not do what it said it was going to do. From that point, it appears it was simply a given that it was going there. And by the time any community consultation took place, in late 2019, the plans for the site were already drawn. There's nothing about this site that would suggest it's a suitable location, quite to the contrary. There's no public transport, surrounded by 3 roads. It's next to a large licensed function. At a time where we're looking for the government to show leadership on climate change, how can we consider tearing up a shaded area of green space and replacing it with a massive concrete and steel heat magnet? The heat mat would be visible from outer space. How can council, with such a strong policy on tree protection and urban canopy, then turn around and turn 35 native trees into wood chip? To see all the mature trees marked with crosses is devastating.
Sorry, Mr. Smith, your time's expired. I'm just going to move an extension of time because your speech has been very good and impassioned. But I don't want to get into the habit of doing that with everyone. So I'm going to move an extension of 1 minute, seconded by Councillor Hesse. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried unanimously. Please proceed, and if you could finish after 60 seconds, that would be great.
Thank you. To see all these mature trees marked with crosses for destruction is devastating. It's nothing short of environmental vandalism. When photos of the crosses were posted online, there were very quickly hundreds of comments from outraged residents about the removal of trees, but also the absolute hypocrisy on the council's stance. The impact on the immediate residents will be significant and adverse. There are several homes within 30 metres that will suffer significantly from the noise generated, which will undoubtedly continue into the early hours of the night. Now, it's not good enough to take more green space when there are other options available, and it's not about trying to retrofit a DA around it. This location needs to be struck out. It's not the appropriate site, and it's not the appropriate plan. I urge you to do the right thing by the community. Stop the destruction of this vital green space, and let's put a world-class skate facility in the right location. And with square kilometres of Roselle literally reduced to rubble, there's a real opportunity to repurpose and regenerate.
Mr. Smith, your time's expired.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Our next speaker is Kate Graham of Lilyfield. Kate, are you there?
Yes, I am, Darcy, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I am Kate Graham. I'm the head teacher HSIE at Balmain College in terms of the Sydney Secondary College. I teach geography, so I am keen about our environment. I'm also a member of Balmain District Football Club. Leichhardt Signets, and Leichhardt Swim Club. So I'm an active community member. I also, like Jason, did enjoy during the COVID times being able to skateboard around the car park at Leichhardt Park, but I do not support the idea of building a skate plaza in the location. I'll just simply add to what Jason has added. I'd urge the councillors this evening to support the notion to rescind, and I'd also not move to a notion for a DA on this ground. I'd also like to support our skate community. Our skate community a decade ago was promised a skate park. This has been downgraded to a skate plaza. The facilities that are being proposed at the moment from the initial drawings, not that we have been able to see the planned architect drawings, which I believe have been produced for several months now, but have not been shared with the community. But the plans that we have been shown show that there is a skate plaza that does not provide the things that were promised to the skate community 10 years ago. What Jason was alluding to at the end of his speech just then was that we proposed that at the Roselle Goodyard site, which is a state government planned site that has just commenced their consultation phase, this is a fantastic location to build a world-class skate facility. You will have visibility, which is a concern for the council. You will have transport for people to get there, and you have the space to create a zone for our youth, as well as those people who are probably now in their 20s that were initially consulted about skate parks and plazas in this local area. I'd also just like to build upon what was stated to the local community here, in that when this was initially branched in October 30, 2018, as councillors, you thought that you were agreeing to go to a consultative phase about where this would be located. Unfortunately, within 24 hours, on the 31st of October, Darcy Byrne published on Facebook to share the good news. Council has now agreed to my resolution to proceed with a new skate park at Leichhardt Oval number 3. After such long unnecessary delays, I'll be pushing hard to get this planned and approved ASAP. They're not words of consultation. This has not been a consultative process. As Jason has alluded to, when we did meet with Aaron Callaghan, it was about a completely different issue. We were sideswiped, and he actually pointed to an area of trees which had a sign on it that said, that had been placed there by the council, these trees have been vandalised for a view. The view I will get if you create the skate park will increase the property value of my house by $200,000. Please don't do that.
Thanks very much, Kate. Thank you very much for sticking so strictly to time as well. Now, just lastly, before I go to Mr. Navarra, the issues that have been raised about consultation obviously will need to be addressed by council officers when we get to actually discussing issues. So I'll just note that for the benefit of everybody. Sal, are you there? Sal, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Nice and clear.
Yes. Okay. All good. Hi, Darcy. Hi, sorry, Mayor Darcy and all the councillors. I'm just going to start by saying is that, look, I've been a resident here for 24 years. I've been a business owner. Sorry, I've been a business for 24 years. I've watched this area grow from where it was the dilapidated RPA club scene, ending with broken car parks, basically not really good people down the bottom there, to watch it grow to a world-class area, which is just absolutely beautiful. You've got the famous Bay Run, you've got greenery. You know, in the time of the 24 years that I've been here, I've planted so many trees, palm trees, everything you can think of to beautify the area. To the other day to walk outside to see a sign on a tree that says that a skate park is going to, or skate plaza is going to be built, basically threw me off guard. And as you know, councillors and everybody, in the last 2 weeks, I've tried to make everybody understand is that putting a skate plaza, which I'm not against, 100%, if you've promised it should be built, it's good for the young generation. But to put it next to a licensed venue that is basically doing beautiful weddings, functions, engagements, council events, charity events, you've got beautiful residents behind us, to put a skate plaza that would attract, with respect, different types of people that would come down that wouldn't have no security, I don't think. I think it would be no supervision. You would have, I believe, I had spoken to give you an idea, Sydenham Skate Park, which is a local resident from there, which has said to me, since they put the skate park in, they have had increased graffiti, They've had people jumping on their buildings, going into the loading docks. Alcohol's been found everywhere. They have been jumping into people's houses and have created a really bad name for all the residents and business that has suffered along the side of this skate park. So I say to the councillors, I say to Mayor Darcy, to everybody in general, this is not the location. It doesn't even deserve to have a DA put to it. I think we all know that it's wrong. It is a busy corner. You have a steep hill coming down from Leichhardt Aquatic Pool, which in the mornings you see the mums racing down 100 miles an hour. I don't see it safe. So I say to you all, why put it there? Why not put it next to the kids' playground? It doesn't even make sense to have it far away, so close to a licensed venue, next to a loading dock. Security reasons. I feel worried about my clients leaving at the end of the night, which will be 1 o'clock, and we've been heckled maybe by people, by young people, whoever they are. One thing I will say during COVID times, and one thing that did, the Bay Run became more famous because when they shut down Coogee and everything. So that area has become a world-renowned area. I like to keep it like that. I like to keep it beautiful. I know the councillors think the same way. And to tear down 30 trees or 25 trees, to rip up the grass, to put a concrete jungle does not make sense to me at all. I promise to fight this to the end because I'm a big believer. I don't want to upset the skate community. I believe it is. I know that the City of Sydney is building one not even 3 to 4 kilometres away. But if the mayor's made an election promise, stick to the election promise, put in the right position that everybody can enjoy and not people suffer from this. And that's all I would say. And again,
Thanks, Sal. Thank you, Sal. Your time's expired. Thank you. You communicated your position very clearly, and thanks very much for being so.
I move an extension. Another minute.
Councillor Passes is moving.
This councillor Steer.
Yeah, I can't hear you very well, Councillor Steer. I'm sure everyone agrees to the extension of time. Sal, do you need 1 minute or 2 or 3, 5?
Give me 2 minutes. If you give me 2 minutes, I appreciate it.
Okay, so we'll move an extension of time of 2 minutes. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. Let's reset the clock at 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can I start off by saying, whether you're Labor, whether you're Liberal, whether you're Green, whether you're an independent, I know that we're all here for the right reason. And again, I will say, if you were to go down to that park or Google images right now where it is, I think other people that are watching right now know, and for a fact, it is not safe. It is not the right location. If you see at the moment, you've got people doing picnics, you've got people out there and people enjoying. As your neighbour said, you could cut the trees down and their value of their properties would go up, but that's not what we want. We want to keep it green. It is a beautiful foreshore. It's probably one of the best middle harbours or small harbours obviously in New South Wales. And I'm not saying that we want to destroy it, but to rip down trees and to rip up the grass. And that's why I would say, I don't want it to go there personally, but I think a lot of people are behind me. If you see Facebook, if you saw what's happened, everybody wants a skate park, but doesn't want it there. So I urge you again, whether you're Labor, Liberal, Independent, Green, whatever you are, I believe that you would do the right thing tonight. Not for myself, but for the people, for your local people that vote for the thing, for your local residents. We can't have people coming down Lifford Road on skateboards coming 100 miles an hour or coming through the back streets. Like somebody said, there's no public transport for it. So again, I will say, I urge you all and I plead with you all to please think about what's been said in the last 2 speakers, including myself. See what's come to the ball, not even a DA. I wouldn't waste any more money. I urge, like I say again, I stress it to you, there are other locations that this place can go. And I think if you make the right decision, a lot of people will work with you to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sal. I won't say thank you for being succinct, but thank you for being so respectful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Next item, item 16. First speaker, Scott Liddycote of Tempe. Scott, are you there? Scott, can you hear me?
Hello.
G'day. How's it going?
Hello. I can hear you.
I can hear you now as well.
Oh, that's good.
Over
Okay, can I go?
Yeah, over to you.
Okay. My name's Scott Liddycote. I'm a resident of Union Street in Tempe for 14 years. I'm here today as a spokesperson for Union Street and to agree to Councillor Macquarie's motion regarding solving the Bunnings traffic distribution away from the local narrow streets and for all exiting traffic to be distributed via the highway and not bombard local streets of which weren't designed for the sheer volume that Bunnings will create. Nobody is against Bunnings as such, but of concern is the ease of which this very large and very busy hardware / lifestyle store has been able to seemingly do as they please in relation to taking over the entire area and then dump literally thousands of vehicles into residential neighbourhoods without a care in the world. We as residents are obviously concerned about the huge increases of traffic flow from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. And as the current sales of Bunnings has increased dramatically again, I am a customer of Bunnings myself. I use it for work every day. I find the traffic modelling is on the very lean side and doesn't truly reflect the full impact of what is going to be felt at Smith Street intersection, which in turn flows into Union Street where I live. Figures in the LATM they are a very large increase to traffic. Large increase to Union Street traffic, and figures don't even mention Sundays at all. So the LATM does not mention the Sunday. Why is that? We have endured similar traffic figures in Union Street years ago when IKEA opened, and council was forced to put concrete barriers in our street to block through traffic. So my question is, why is Bunnings, which generates just as much and even more traffic all day, every day, allowed to do exactly the opposite to IKEA and dump all of its traffic into residential streets? The approval shouldn't have even been granted in the first place without having the LATM in place. Excuse me. Councillor Macri's motion puts the majority of the traffic responsibility back on Bunnings and not on the local streets, which will be overrun. We're allowed to feel safe in our local area, and our children should be allowed to feel safe also. But our streets will be ruined by this huge influx of trucks and cars that this store generates 7 days a week, all day, every day. It's a bit of a no-brainer, I believe. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thanks very much, Scott. Our next registered speaker on this item is Patrick William of Tempe. Patrick, are you there?
I am Councillor Macri. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me the time to speak. I speak as a resident of Tempe, and I speak on behalf of the residents of Edwin Street, which is a cross street to Union Street. I've lived in Tempe for nearly a decade. I speak as a resident and a father whose daughter is registered to attend kindergarten at Tempe Public next year. Anyone who has seen Union Street will understand that Union Street is a rat run. It's narrow. It is not made for large volumes of traffic. There are plenty of school children walking on that street before school starts and when school ends. And we already have an issue with people who will not stop at the pedestrian crossing. Now, against that background, it defies common sense to send thousands of cars, quite literally thousands of cars through every day down a street like that. It is a residential street. It is a narrow street. It is next to a primary school. Now, we like to say the children are our future, but children of that age have no common sense. And the last thing we want is to see an injury or, heaven forbid, a death because this motion was not passed. I'm not against Bunnings, but I'm very much against the use of this street as a thoroughfare for vehicles exiting Bunnings. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Our next speaker is Juliet Barr. Juliet, are you there?
Yep. Hi, councillors. So my name's Juliet Barr. I actually own, just to be totally upfront, I own with my husband a little shed on South Street. We've had it for about 23 years. It's rented by 2 tradies. I also had a son at Tempe High School last year, and I feel a real connection to the people of Tempe and the young families that live in that area. The Union Street is going to be affected by an influx, a tsunami of cars where the school is if something isn't done. And I'm fully supportive of Councillor Macri's motion that Bunnings should use the exit onto the Princess Highway. It would just ease traffic through the suburb. So I've done YouTube videos. I've sent you all the councillors videos of the parents outside the school with their children that they've had to, they're very, very concerned. It's hundreds of kids, and Union Street is a one-way street, and it already has cars parked on the pavement on both sides. To get, you know, hundreds more cars down that street a day because of Bunnings, it is going to be a disaster, and it's going to be very, very unsafe. So the community, how many protests have we had? We have had 2 protests. We've had articles in the paper. We've had petitions. I've done 2 YouTube videos. I've spoken at council before. This is a very serious issue for the young families of Tempe, and Bunnings also know how many young families live in the area. They have more than average for Sydney. Because there's so many small houses, it was an affordable place. It's an affordable place for families to live. And also kids don't have backyards or front yards, really. They're tiny. The pavement is where they meet and they do things and have fun and play with each other. So I'm really, I would really like this entry and exit to be on the Princess Highway, just to save the people of Tempe and make the children safe. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Juliet. That concludes all the speakers for item 16. The next item for which there's a registered speaker is item 25, and that speaker is Nick Dean of Marrickville. Nick, are you there? Nick, can you hear me?
I'm off now.
Hello, Nick.
I'm here.
G'day.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Nick Dean. I'm the convener of the Marrickville Peace Group. And I'd like to start by congratulating Council on having this motion up at this time. Your timing is absolutely exquisite, because in a little over a month, the Treaty to Prohibit Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, is going to be ratified in the United Nations, and it will come into force on the 24th of January. Now, if nuclear weapons were ever used, that would be a global catastrophe. So we're in a situation where there is whilst nuclear weapons are in existence and some of them are on hair trigger alert, we have the situation where a global catastrophe is simply waiting to happen. It would be a catastrophe because there's absolutely no way that emergency services could ever cope with the scale of the humanitarian disaster that even a limited exchange of nuclear weapons would bring about. And more than that, even a limited nuclear confrontation could result in what's called nuclear winter, which would result in global famine, and the consequences are just unthinkable. Really, the simple way to say this is that nuclear weapons should not exist. They have no right to exist, and they shouldn't be there. No country should have them in their armory. Now, Australia is a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that's nearly 50 years old. And Article 6 of that treaty obliges the parties to it to negotiate in good faith for effective measures aimed at disarmament. Instead of doing that, the Australian government boycotted the early United Nations sponsored negotiations that were held in the lead up to the adoption of the Treaty to Prohibit Nuclear Weapons. So they joined with countries that actually do possess them in opposing any moves to have them declared illegal. I find that extraordinary and incomprehensible, because Australia has a good record of consistently opposing weapons of mass destruction, like biological weapons, landmines, weapons of this sort. Australia has always opposed them. But when it comes to nuclear weapons, suddenly we don't even want to talk about it. It's quite extraordinary, and I don't understand. It's very inconsistent. But come January the 24th, although the doomsday clock still stands at 90 seconds to midnight, come January the 24th, the world might be a little bit safer because after that time, nuclear weapons will be stigmatized. And I hope, and thank you to Council for having this motion before it, I hope that the Australian government is persuaded eventually to join in ratifying the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons, because as I say, nuclear weapons have no valid place in any country's armoury, and I want to see them banned. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks very much, Nick. I might say I didn't arrange for Nick to speak to this item. That's just an exhibition of his long-standing commitment to such an important global issue. So thanks very much for your activism, Nick. And the last item for which we have registered speakers is item 31, Globe Wilkins Preschool Tender. And the first speaker is Pal Gupta of Dulwich Hill.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of this motion to authorise council officers to submit a tender to the New South Wales Government for the continued operation of Globe Wilkins Preschool on the Wilkins Public School site, and to set aside Section 94 funds for the preschool's fit out. I won't reiterate why it's so important that this service stays open and its value to our community. You've all heard that many times before, and I already know that the community has your support for this award-winning service, which incidentally has again achieved an exceeding rating from the Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority, and has now been invited to apply for an excellence rating for a groundbreaking third time in a row. It's now been more than 2 years since the uncertainty around Globe's future came to light. And in the time that has passed since then, the community has made it abundantly clear that we want this service to remain open. The sustained support the preschool has seen from people from all walks of life should leave you in no doubt that Inner West residents expect the council to do whatever it takes to ensure Globe's future. Indeed, the community has worked hard to ensure that decision makers everywhere, from the councillors here tonight to federal and state members of parliament, know how important this service is and its role as a guiding light for how top quality preschool services can and should be delivered for the benefit of the entire community. In the lead up to the election of councillors to the newly amalgamated Inner West Council in 2017, the common promise residents heard was that the services provided by former councils would not be eroded as a result of amalgamation, that sporting facilities would continue to be upkept and upgraded, that we would continue to have access to top quality libraries, that community infrastructure would not suffer, and that indeed the Inner West Council would continue to provide the excellent level of care and education to Inner West kids through long daycare, family daycare, and your one dedicated award-winning preschool, Globe Wilkins. Now, as it looks as though rates are set to rise in the former Mayoral Council area, the closure of a former Mayoral Council service as beloved as Globe, in contradiction to this promise, would be a travesty. There have been many hurdles on the path to ensuring Globe's future to this point, and we've cleared them all so far. One of the most significant victories being the $2 million infrastructure agreement with the New South Wales Government to build the new preschool building at Wilkins Public School. But there is one major hurdle left. You, the council, must win the tender to continue to run Globe from this new building. It is the only way forward. The community has done what it can. The future of Globe is in your hands. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pal. Our next speaker is Dr. Mei Ling Yap of Marrickville.
Hello, good evening, Chairperson, Mayor Byrne and councillors. Many thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. As a proud Inner West community member and future Globe Wilkins parent, I'd like to explain why I think Globe Wilkins should remain a council-run preschool and that a tender be put forward to ensure this occurs. I've lived in Marrickville for the past 8 years and proud to be a resident of the Inner West. Preschools had been foreign concepts to me until the last few months when my daughter was fast approaching 3 and it was time to consider early childhood education. My background is as a medical professional, so when considering whether to enrol her in a preschool, and whether that be a dedicated preschool versus a daycare or a nanny, I look to the research. It's clear from research that preschool for children from the age of 3 and 4 has profound benefits, not only to children, by leading to improved socioeconomic status, higher rates of tertiary education, and lower rates of drug abuse and crime, but it's cost effective to society as a whole. But then the next question was, which preschool? From chatting with fellow parents in the community, at the playgrounds, at the Addison Road markets, at the pool, the advice I received was, Globe Wilkins is a fantastic option if you're lucky enough to get a place. I ended up doing a couple of tours of different preschools and daycares, and when I entered the grounds of Globe Wilkins, it was clear to me why this has the reputation to be one of the best preschools in the country. We were greeted with Nagimbi by children who clearly enjoyed the lively and open atmosphere of Globe Wilkins. My daughter followed them through the doors and got stuck into doing some crafts straight away. It was so welcoming, and I could see that the children were from diverse backgrounds and being clearly encouraged by the educators to be environmentally conscious, respectful, and fair. My husband, who works in the arts, was also impressed by the creative environment. I immediately enrolled my daughter the next day, and she'll be starting next month and is so looking forward to starting. Interestingly, the values of Globe Wilkins, which were apparent to me on the tour, equity, dedication to understanding First Nations culture, diversity, environmental consciousness, creativity, and sense of community are all values which I know the Inner West Council to hold, and the reasons why I'm so proud to live in the Inner West and be a constituent of this council area rather than anywhere else in Sydney. The values and commitments of the Inner West Council seem to have been manifested through the Globe Wilkins preschool, and for it to change to a private provider will likely mean this preschool will not remain the same. My hope is my daughter will continue to attend a council-run Globe Wilkins through 2021 and beyond, and so will her little brother in 2023 and 2024. I was willing to take the gamble and enroll my daughter in Globe next year, despite the uncertainties regarding the new build, because my impression is that Globe Wilkins is an exemplary preschool, and I truly hope the Inner West Council will protect and preserve one of its most outstanding assets. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. And in the same way that you're proud to live in the sort of community where those values are upheld, I think I speak for all the councillors in saying that we're proud to represent a community where the contributions from our citizenry are so articulate and erudite, as has been the case with all of our contributors tonight. So thank you very much for taking the time. Our last speaker on this item is Ruth Harrison of Petersham. Ruth, are you there? Ruth, can you hear me?
Okay. Are we working?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Ruth Harrison. I'm a mother to Eli and Sunny. My children attended Globe spanning 5 years and are now both enrolled at Wilkins Public School. My son's first day at preschool, he picked up a stick on the way, and when we got to the gate, I said to him, "You're going to have to leave the stick here." Anyway, to my surprise, when we got inside, the children were building a massive stick shelter out of the natural environment around them. They were trusted with scissors. They were working together. It was creative. And this really was a breath of fresh air for our family, having come from a synthetic grass, prefabricated cut-shaped daycare previous. And it really was a long way from our first daycare, which can really be only described as a soulless, child-minding factory. Globe Wilkins truly is a diamond in the rough. The nurturing and care there is unmatched, and it's been consistent throughout the 5 years that my children were there. Also, Globe has connected many families spanning from Stanmore to Hurlstone Park. It really does cover a huge section of the Inner West. And I mean, I would have to say that a strong sense of community is possibly one of the most defining characteristics of the Inner West, for which many, including my family, Globe has been the cornerstone. But such a sort of wholesome and deep-rooted organisation is not really developed overnight, and it's difficult to replicate. And Globe has really been refined and strengthened over decades. There are three things that I am asking of council and councillors. Firstly, if you have not been to Globe, I urge you to go. See it for yourself before you decide to really tear a limb from our community. Secondly, I request to council to submit a serious tender for the continuation of this highly decorated preschool. Keeping in mind the Globe comes with a strong identity, excellent reputation, a dedicated long-standing team, systems, enrolments, and almost no learning curve. And lastly is to set aside funds from Section 94 for the relocation and fit out of Globe Wilkins. Although my children won't benefit directly, I implore you to give families like mine options, not to force families into mechanical, underdeveloped and bottom line led institutions. Failing to fight for Globe surely is a short-term saving with long-term ramifications. I mean, lastly, in finishing, really what I want to say is don't let possibly the greatest preschool in the country on paper and off paper die on your watch. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much for that, Ruth.
Thank you.
Now, just before we go on to the other items, I believe that concludes the public forum. I believe that Councillor Rescind is not in attendance tonight, but I can report to councillors who may not be aware that Councillor Rescind's father has passed away this week. And so I would like to move a condolence motion on behalf of the council, just to send out our love and respect to her and her family at such a difficult time. So I'll move that way. Councillor Macri will second the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Councillors, that brings us to the one Mayoral minute which has been tabled tonight, which is really just a thank you and acknowledgement of the terrific work of council officers and the council as a whole in having won the New South Wales Sports Council Award, the 2020 Sport New South Wales Community Sports Award, which comes on the back of a lot of other awards that we've won of late. It's a timely recognition of all of the great work that council is doing in the community. The New Mayoral Library has been recognised and handed a number of prestigious awards recently, including the National Architecture Award, in which it won both the joint winner, the Sir Zellman Award for Public Architecture, and the David Oppenheim Award for Sustainable Architecture. I won't list all of the others because there's a lot of them. There's awards from the National Trust, from the Australian Institute of Architects. There's a whole bunch from there, 5 or 6. From the Australian Timber Design Awards and the Australian Interior Design Awards. So I think we're all aware of what a fantastic public institution that one is. In relation to the Sports Award, you know, we've made a decision at the start of this term of council to invest heavily in sport, recreation facilities and green and open spaces as an investment in the health of our community. And obviously the new Ashfield pool, which is, I'm sure will win lots of awards itself because it's such a beautiful place. That's one good example. Dawn Fraser Pool will open within days, which will be another highlight. But the truth is there's been excellent work done across the whole of the last 3 years by the council's infrastructure and recreation teams in order to increase participation in sport in the local community. And in addition to all of the capital investment, I think the establishment of the Office of Sport, which has been acknowledged from Sports New South Wales in this award, has been really groundbreaking. But to have the council focusing on driving up participation, particularly from women and girls, but also from other communities and groups of people who have been underrepresented in participation in local sport before. That's really important work. And so all of those officers need to hear how grateful and thankful we are for their work. And so I've tabled tonight's motion, which is simply just an acknowledgement of the award and to pass on our thanks to the officers who...
Mr Mayor?
Is there anyone who'd like to second the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, may I speak?
You wish to second it, Councillor Passos?
Yes, why not?
Excellent, please do.
Oh, well, first of all, Mayor, could you tell me how many councils have Office of Sports?
I don't know the answer to that. Not many.
Well, this award is given out, so we don't know how many other councils have an Office of Sports position.
No, I have no idea. The award's not specifically for that. It's just referenced in the statement from the Office of Sport.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Just one moment, councillors. So I know there's been a whole lot of motions circulated, or emails circulated amongst councillors about trying to do what we can to identify the items that councillors are happy to move in bulk. But I've done this many times, not on Zoom though. And whilst it's a very useful exercise and can cut down a lot of time, it also does need to be done by exception. So essentially, I'm going to go through the list of items, not including the. I suppose I'll try for consensus on the motions as well. I'm going to go through the list of items, and if there's any one councillor who wants to ask a question or speak to an item, then it doesn't go on the bulk list. And usually that's resulted in us only getting down to about 2 or 3 things that we move in bulk, but I guess that's better than none. So we'll go through the list. Item 1, New Year's Eve. Councillors, I've circulated an alternative motion, so that will need to be tabled and discussed. Inner West Council annual grants. Is there any councillor who wishes to speak to that or to ask a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll take that out. Ashfield Aquatic Centre space naming. Can that be moved in bulk?
No, I'd like to speak on that.
Councillor De Cruz has got an amendment. Review of General Manager's delegations. Can that be moved in bulk?
No, I'd like to speak on that.
Okay, Councillor Passos wants to speak to that one.
And same here.
Yep, well, it's all right. Doesn't need 5 people, John. Once there's one person who wants to speak to it, then it doesn't go on the bulk list.
Thanks.
Item 5, 2021 council meeting and briefing schedule.
I'd like to speak on that.
Councillor Passos will speak to that one. Rates harmonisation progress update.
Yes.
Yes.
Speak on that. Whites Creek Wetland update on current works. That going in the bulk list? Okay, excellent. There's one. Shade sale program. Anyone want to speak to that? No, that's 2. So we've got
yeah, Darcy, I do want to speak to that. I've circulated an amendment.
Okay. So we've just got item 7 at the moment. Telstra building in Balmain. Can that go through? Okay, that's a second item. Damage to council property, item 10. Does anyone want to call it?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got item 7 and item 9. Item 11 obviously is going to be debated, and then I'll presume that all of the notices of motion will need to be debated, regardless of whether the speaker wants to waive their right or not. Item 12, street tree and other tree planting by council.
Yes.
That's a notice of motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's the mover of a notice of motion who is willing to allow their motion to go through unamended? I think I'm in that category for all of mine.
I am, as I've indicated by email. I don't know what number mine is. Number 1,872,000.
Yes, that's right.
I'd like to speak on that motion.
Oh, wait.
So we'll take that out. John, I know you want me just to say they're all motions, but I'm just going to go through the list anyway, just for clarity.
Yeah, sure.
Councillor Carers allowance.
Yes, I'd like to speak on it.
Same-sex marriages in town halls.
Yes, I'd like to speak on it.
Pride officer, multicultural officer and sports officer.
Yes, I wouldn't have put them up if I didn't want to speak on them.
I understand. Forgive me, I'm just trying to be thorough. Notice of motion, Tempe local area traffic management.
Yes.
Communication with our community. Councillor De Cruz, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Ashfield Pool.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we do want to speak to the Ashfield pool costs. Oh, no, sorry, it's an early one. Yep.
Item 20, submission of motions. Councillor Stamoulis.
Can we leave that to next time?
You can, if you're willing to defer it.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll leave it to next time. Yep.
That's the spirit. Good on you. Okay, Councillor Stamoulis is willing to agree to deferral of submission of motions. Item 21, potential park locations for exercise equipment.
I'm happy to defer that there to next year to see if staff.
Okay. Notice of motion, gender equal representation. Councillor Passos wants to speak to it. Support for renters during COVID-19 crisis. Does anyone want to speak to that? No? Excellent. Food organics collection service in Marrickville. No? Very good. Support for the ratification.
Yes, I would like to speak to that one.
Okay. All right. So we've got that can go through in bulk items.
What was the next one after that, Mr. Mayor, please?
Well, then we're getting to the confidential session. So I'm presuming we'll need to deal with all of those. Okay, so that means we've got items 7, 9, 23 and 24, which can be moved for adoption in bulk. And then
I'll move those.
Well,
Adoption in bulk, or are they going to be deferred?
No, sorry, I'll just clarify, Councillor Passos. It's been agreed that the following items can be moved unamended. That's items 7, 9, 23 and 24. I'll move those as 2 of those motions are mine. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by
Yes,
Councillor
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Excellent.
Mayor? Councillor. Oh.
Councillor
No, this is
Steer.
Councillor Steer.
Yep, no, I got it. Thank you very much. Just forgive me, I'm an imperfect chair. So we've got 7, 9, 23 and 24 to be moved in bulk, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Steer. And then we've got a motion for deferral of items 20 and 21, moved by Stamoulis, seconded by Macri. So I'll put the first one for adoption of those items from myself and Councillor Steer. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. And then the motion for deferral, all those in favour? Against? I'll declare that carried unanimously as well.
Mr. Mayor, I'm withdrawing 19. That's been answered. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll get to that later on. Now, I'm just going to go to the interim general manager to just get some advice about whether there are any items that have a time imperative from the perspective of council officers, so that we can, I'll seek to bring those forward so they can be dealt with. Brian, do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, through the chair. Clearly, the items 1 through to 5 need to be dealt with, but there are a number of reports in the confidential section that would be useful to have decisions on. Item 30, item 27, and I believe item 28 or 29.
Yeah.
So if we can get into the confidential session before we close the meeting, that would be good.
Yeah, okay. Well, we won't try to do that right now, particularly given that items 1 through 5 would come up first on the agenda regardless. So I don't think that requires an amendment, but I'll just indicate to councillors my intention when we get on a bit later to make sure that we do go into confidential session so that those items can be dealt with. That brings us to item 1, New Year's Eve. Now, councillors, I've circulated a motion for consideration, which I'll table as the primary motion. It's not incongruous with the recommendation of the council officers. I would describe it as a strengthening of the actions to be taken. And the reason for that is that we just haven't received any written advice at all from the New South Wales government about how they're intending to manage the safety risks on New Year's Eve in our area. We know that through the sensible measures they've taken in the CBD and North Sydney, requiring anyone attending those locations to actually have a ticket to a venue, so there'll be no foreshore crowd. They're very sensible measures, but they haven't been implemented here, and therefore there's been an incentivisation for large numbers of people all over Sydney and perhaps New South Wales to come to Balmain and Birchgrove on New Year's Eve. It's been the view of the councils through our previous resolution that we'd like to make sure there is a good end to this year. And I've personally tried to liaise closely with the government to make sure that we could have safe plans for New Year's Eve celebrations to take place and for local residents in particular to be able to attend local parks. But not only have they failed to provide any advice to us, they have not responded to the council's correspondence following the last time this was discussed, even though I specified in that correspondence to the Premier, the Health Minister, the Chief Health Officer, the Police Minister, and so on, that we would be meeting on the 8th of December, and we would need to make a decision then based on the advice that was provided about how we could ensure that public health risks were managed safely. So I think it's strange that there's been no response, no advice at all, given that the government's primary responsibility for the protection of public health. And it's almost as though that they've forgotten that COVID doesn't stop at local council boundaries. I support their plans for North Sydney and the CBD, but we can't have laissez-faire when it comes to COVID in the inner west. And the truth is that even though the New South Wales government's done terrific work on the pandemic, and our society as a whole has as well, there's no point getting the football all the way up the field and then knocking on just before you get to the try line. We can't have an outbreak on New Year's Eve, and no one can say with certainty that that won't occur if there aren't proper protections in place. So I'm proposing that we officially close our parks on New Year's Eve, given the government's reluctance to provide any plans that have been endorsed by the Chief Health Officer, that we notify the community, and importantly, that we undertake a marketing campaign to encourage local residents to book in now to attend a local business that's been struggling through the economic crisis, and spend their New Year's Eve there, because we know that we need that money in our local economy. And I think we need to get back in touch with the government and still insist that we want to talk to them. We need to know what their plans are for New Year's Eve, because there will still be public health risks that need to be managed regardless of the status of our parks. So I'll move that way, councillors, and I'll seek a seconder.
Mr Mayor, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Passis. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes. Look, it's unfortunate that the government hasn't got back to the council, but I suppose we understand that because we don't always do things in the proper manner. We don't always get back to our residents when they expect us to. However, Mayor, for 7 minutes of fireworks, I really think that what our residents have put up with and the rest of the world during this COVID crisis, we shouldn't be too upset about this. We've suffered enough. To miss out on 7 minutes of fireworks that are the same every year, I don't think is going to upset our residents too much. As you said, there are other venues, there are other ways that you can celebrate the new year coming in, and let's hope to God that it's nowhere near like what we've just been through. Fireworks were never a New Year celebration going back years and years ago. It was family and friends meeting up and enjoying yourself. Your idea of supporting the local businesses is fantastic. So I think it's a shame, but I think people have missed out on a lot of things during this year. And there's people that are missing out on meeting up with their families at Christmas that cannot come home. So it's a no-brainer. Over, dusted, done with, get ready and let's set up a big celebration for next year.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Passis. Is there any other discussion, councillors?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Councillor Porteous.
Look, Councillor Byrne, I'm really concerned about your motion. Number one, I don't think it's been thought through particularly well. I mean, how are you going to enforce something like this? How do you close a public park? I'm thinking, for example, Birch Grove Park, for example, which has multiple, almost unlimited number of entries into it. And a lot of our parks are very similar in nature. I mean, if people choose to use the parks, they're going to use the parks. And
I presume that you were posing a question then rather than speaking to the item, so I'm happy to address
no,
that.
I'm not. I'm speaking to the item.
Oh, okay, it was rhetorical. Sorry, my mistake.
I'm speaking to the item. You're very welcome to respond to it afterwards in your right of reply.
No problem.
But I mean, I think that the point is that in a sense, we're creating a situation where our local residents would be trespassing in their local park, which is an appalling situation. I agree that the current position that we're in is not good. It's really poor. We have been in similar situations though before. I mean, I remember a very similar situation when I was mayor of Leichhardt Council, where they suddenly determined that there were going to be controls on alcohol in North Sydney and in the CBD, and therefore we got a huge influx of residents, of visitors really, coming into the Balmain Peninsula. I do think that at this stage it's preempting that there won't be a response from the New South Wales government, and that we should allow the New South Wales government to respond. I think we should be doing everything we can to keep our parks open and to keep them under a reasonable control, which enables our local residents particularly to be able to use them, as many do traditionally every year on New Year's Eve. As has been said, it's been a pretty awful year this year. And I do think that where we can, we want to be able to enable our residents to at least have that short celebration on New Year's Eve and say that we're hoping for a much better year in 2021. And the parks are the most egalitarian, the place where everybody can meet together as equals and without cost, and have a celebration and have that sense of all supporting the community together. So I'm strongly against this. I do think that there's a lot more work to do to resolve this. It's only the 8th of December now. It would be great if the New South Wales government was more timely in their responses, but I do think that we have to give them time to respond. There are solutions, I believe, that can be found if we just work through this process a bit more. And I'd hate us to be preempting this simply because this meeting has been designated as the last meeting for this term of council in 2020, and we're therefore making which is not really the best decision at this time.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Passis. Sorry, Ken. Just before I go to any other speakers, I think it's important to note that, put aside the motion before us, it's important to understand the concerns that council officers have and what their view is of public safety in regards to the matter. Certainly shouldn't be taking my comments as gospel. So I'll put that as a question to the General Manager. What liaison have we had with the New South Wales, with the local police? What are their concerns? What resources have been made available, and why have council officers recommended that we specifically discourage residents from attending local parks in their report?
Through the chair, we have met with the local area command, and they have given very clear advice that the number of police officers that are going to be available in the peninsula this year is going to be similar to the number of police that were available in other years, and that's a simple case that police are required in a lot of local government areas on New Year's Eve, and it is not all that easy to redeploy police officers from other commands to support the local area command. The police have indicated that their concerns are that with a limited number of police, that if there were large numbers of people gathering, and if the current public health order required them to take action in relation to those crowds, that it would simply be they would simply be incapable of doing that. So their advice at this stage is, by all means, if locals want to mill around the peninsula, that may be something that can be managed effectively. But they were certainly discouraging any process where we would be inviting people from outside the local government area into our parks. There's also the second question, which is the parks that have kind of a previous view of what would have been far more spectacular fireworks. They have been designated in what the New South Wales government has identified as its yellow zone. And at this stage, we are just completely unclear what that yellow zone actually requires us to do. The police are kind of suggesting to us that it may extend so far as to, require us to have, COVID safe plans in relation to those parks. If we were required to have those as the custodian of those parks, then we would be required to ensure we had barriers in place, that we had security guards in place, that we were managing the people's entry and exit from those spaces. So their general feedback to date is that a safer course of action would be to follow the approach that the New South Wales government has adopted, which is watch from home, stay local, and support your local businesses.
Okay, thank you for that. And just in relation to compliance, in regards to Councillor Porteous's suggestion that the motion that I've tabled involves setting up barriers and council policing it. But my intention, and I have specifically referred to the fact that we want to reassert the responsibility of the New South Wales Police for public safety. My intention was that we simply give the police the maximum amount of power that they can, Brian, in the implementation of discouraging people from coming to the parks, and that it would be better to have all of the Birchgrove and Balmain parks treated in the same way rather than just the ones that have been unilaterally decided through the government's media announcement about New Year's Eve. Could you just explain what powers the police have for move on under the yellow zones or under a park closure? And if council resolves specifically not to involve our rangers in those policing matters, which we've done throughout the crisis, we've deliberately kept them out of it. Is that a legitimate thing for us to do?
Through the chair, yes, I do think it's a legitimate thing that council could do. Just to take the point of how practical is it to actually close our parks. I think anyone who wandered around their local government area during the height of the COVID period would recognise that signage accompanied by very strong public messaging about don't go into these places can actually lead to very, very good responses from the local community. Certainly during the COVID period, local government areas across Sydney were simply able to post signs, and through the public marketing campaign, most residents understood that the parks were not places that they were entitled to gather. So I think you could actually achieve the outcome we're looking for with just posting notices. As far as the police are concerned, they just want, if at all possible, to ensure that the peninsula is a safe place for people to be, and they are concerned that if there are large numbers of people on the peninsula on New Year's Eve, that not only will the parks themselves be difficult to manage, but people need to get into the peninsula and get out of the peninsula. And at the present moment, Transport for New South Wales have indicated that they will only have the same number of buses available, but the number of buses are restricted to the number of passengers they can hold. So the ability of actually getting people into the peninsula or out of the peninsula is going to be compromised by COVID restrictions, and the police are concerned that that if you mix a long night of celebration, the potential of imbibing of alcohol, and then frustration over not being able to get out of the local government area, it could lead to acts of public disorder that they're concerned about.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, through you to the General Manager, isn't it a case of simply, as the interim General Manager has just said, we let our residents know that we are not endorsing the gatherings. And as Mr. Barrett just said, signage to say, as I said, for 7 minutes, we're not endorsing this. You cannot stop people going out the street. You cannot stop people going to the park. But a message has to be sent out. We've got 3 weeks to do it. We do not stick to the COVID restrictions.
Councillor Passage, I agree with you, but you've spoken to the item already. So I'm happy to put a question to the council officers, which I think is in line with the point you were making, which is just what is the capacity of council officers to communicate a message about staying away if we don't make a decision now that we are actually going to try to convey that to the community?
Through the chair, we understand that the Department of Premier and Cabinet are meeting with council staff this week. In fact, I think as early as tomorrow, and it would appear that the government is going to mount a rather significant public campaign, media campaign, both in the published media, in social media, and on radio and television, which is sending the messages that are incorporated in the Mayor's resolution here, which is essentially, stay in your own local government area, watch the fireworks from the comfort of your television, or visit a local restaurant or a local establishment and enjoy the New Year's Eve locally.
Okay.
The reality is that with the amount of time that we have left, trying to make last-minute decisions over issues that involve this many people is fraught with danger.
Thanks very much for that. Is there any councillor who hasn't spoken to the item who wishes to speak to it?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Stamos.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I find this quite a big measure to digest at very short notice. Now, parks all over the inner west, Enmore, Ashfield, parks along the Cooks River are going to have hundreds and hundreds of people in those particular parks on New Year's Eve, but they're not part of this resolution. Similarly, the vast majority of parks on the Balmain Peninsula aren't anywhere near the fireworks at all. They're not vantage points, and they'll have 10s, 20s, maybe a couple of hundred people on them. They're very much scattered. Inclusion of all parks is a very, very drastic measure. Additionally, our restaurants, our pubs, hopefully right throughout the municipality will be bubbling away. So will many households will be bubbling away. So this seems to me a measure that is a measure that I've never seen before, to close down all the parks in given suburbs, Balmain, Rozelle, and Birchgrove and Balmain East. I'm wondering what advice, if I could put a question through to you, what is the advice that we've received from the Department of Health? Because every single issue that we've taken and every bit of advice that council has taken right throughout the course of COVID has come from the Department of Health. So what have we sought from them? Could I put that question to the appropriate officer? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, councillor, for concluding your remarks, and I will now put that question. But before I do, I just want to indicate my intention to amend point 5 to read closes all foreshore parks on the Balmain Peninsula, because I think you've got a valid point that it's not my experience that I have spent a lot of time in Balmain on New Year's Eve. If there's no view of the Harbour Bridge, I don't think you'll find many people in those parks, but if someone wants to go there, good luck to them. We certainly shouldn't be preventing them from doing so as long as it's safe. So I'll make that amendment in response to your constructive suggestion, Councillor Stamos, and I'll put your question to the council officers.
Through the chair, despite written requests for information from the Chief Health Officer and from the Department of Health, and despite a number of attempts to try to contact local health authorities, we have been unable to gain any information from the Department of Health apart from the public health order itself, which simply provides guidance in relation to the 2 square metre rule for outside gatherings of people. But unfortunately, we don't have any better information than the public health order that all councillors would be aware of.
Mayor, may I move that the motion be put? I believe we've had 2 speakers in favour and 2 against.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I had a minute and a half left, Mr. Mayor.
No, sorry, Councillor Stamos. I've tried to uphold the practice. I'll give you a little bit of leeway here. If you've got a question, put your question, or put your questions at the end. You don't get to stop and start your clock. So I'll give you another minute and 30 seconds to conclude your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then I will be seeking an amendment that council uses the resources of the police to manage foreshore parks, the numbers in foreshore parks on the Balmain Peninsula. And you've obviously sought advice from the Department of Health, but I would say that we seek the cooperation of the police to manage those numbers in foreshore parks with council. So that's my amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Stamos. I'm afraid that's redundant because we're already cooperating with the police. So unless the point that you're going to is in regards to whose responsibility it is, I think. So point 4 reads that we reassert the primary responsibility for ensuring public safety and adherence to public health orders at public parks on the Balmain Peninsula on New Year's Eve remains the responsibility of the New South Wales Government and the New South Wales Police. So I'm not willing to agree to an amendment which would deploy our rangers to implement an inherently dangerous and poor situation which we haven't created. So what is it that you're seeking to amend in that point, Councillor Stamos?
Mr. Mayor, I believe we can accommodate those numbers in foreshore parks in a way that's effective, and that if more people than the numbers should be there, then the police or officers have the opportunity then to turn those people away.
Well, that goes without saying, Councillor Stamos. We're not in charge of the New South Wales Police. We're all familiar with what the public health orders are. There's a move on power under the government's yellow zone. And essentially we're extending that, if this motion is adopted, we're extending that move on power to all of council's parks so that they can use their own judgment about how to best protect public safety on the night. So I don't believe you proposed an amendment unless you forwarded a different one to the minute taker. Is there any further discussion, councillors?
No,
Yeah,
that's a question.
Yes, who's that?
I think Councillor Lockie and De Cruz at the same time.
Okay, well, let's go Councillor Lockie, then Councillor De Cruz.
The question was just in relation to what the practical effect of point 5 would be. Like if, for example, we close the parks, we put that signage up and a group of people turn up to the park and want to be there on New Year's Eve.
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, there is the legal consequence of gathering, notwithstanding a closure on council's part. The legal effect of that would be that the people gathering would potentially expose themselves to an $1,100 fine. The practical reality is that the police are very well aware that they simply do not have the numbers on any New Year's Eve to be able to move large numbers of people, particularly large numbers of people who may have been imbibing alcohol. and they are very cautious about how they use their powers to direct people. Hence their concern about large numbers swelling in these parks, because the reality is that they are concerned that they will put their own officers in harm's way if we don't attempt to work with the government in relation to New Year's Eve.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Lockie, did you have a further question?
No.
Thanks for that. Councillor De Cruz?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused whether we're actually closing off the peninsula, because I know normally it's blocked to cars. We're also blocking it to people on foot and everything else, because I actually am a bit worried that by the time the people get to the park, it's a bit late.
Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I'll just take that question. No, that's not what's proposed in the motion. There is no proposal in the motion to do anything about the government's orders allow for anyone in Sydney to come to Balmain. So in order to go to North Sydney or the CBD, you'll need to apply through Service New South Wales and demonstrate that you have a ticket to a venue. So there'll be no one on the foreshore other than people specifically approved by the government. But in Balmain, there's no restriction at all, none. So the motion that's before us simply proposes that we declare the parks closed, not that we seek to manage the population within the area on the evening, and it notes that that's the responsibility of the police. So I hope that clarifies your question.
No. My question is entry of other people to the peninsula.
Yeah, there's no change to that at all. That's allowed at any time. The only thing that's blocked off is private vehicles most New Year's.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So we're not changing that. Okay.
There's nothing in the motion about that at all. So is that something you're seeking to formulate as an amendment?
Look, I think we really need to block people entering the peninsula, because otherwise you're actually going to have the problem further down.
Thank you for your comment. Further discussion, Councillor?
So that's an amendment.
Oh, it's not. You'll need to send it to the minute taker for it to be an amendment. Councillor Macri?
Chair, I think the motion you put together is very good, and with the information we have at the current time, it's the most workable motion we can work with. I've got only one concern. The wording on the signage, due to the New South Wales government's failure to provide Inner West Council with a COVID safety plan this parking, maybe some wording that's not as provocative might be better. I think it sounds a little bit political. And if anything changes further on, maybe you'd like to add that we delegate general authority to the general manager. If anything changes drastically, that if they suddenly decide to pay for security and roll security out in one of the parks, well, that can be handled by him.
I'm happy to delegate to the general manager the wording on the signage. What I'm seeking to avoid is thousands upon thousands of people ringing up council because the wording was unclear, and presuming that council has, without any reason at all, chosen to close the parks, which will be hugely time consuming for our officers. That'll be the biggest inundation of phone calls at customer service that we've ever had. So I think it's better to be honest with people. I'm happy for the general. I'm just trying to specify that we actually address that. And look, if the government comes back and says, actually, you're right, you know, we overlooked this because we've had a lot on, and here's the safety measures we're looking to implement, of course we should implement those safety measures. It's not about a political argument, but, you know, at the moment we're getting a hospital pass that is bringing us having a COVID outbreak in our community, in our neighbourhood.
Agreed.
So, look, how about we liaise with the general manager about that? I'm happy for the wording to be changed subsequently, or that just to be indicative, but I'm not going to just pretend that council's done this for the past.
I know.
Okay, but all you have to do is just tone the language down slightly.
Let's just delegate it to the general manager to work it out away from a political forum.
Yep. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so that now reads that the signage should be determined by the general manager. The end. Everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? I'll go
So can you look at my amendment?
Yeah, so if we
I'll
could bring
send it to Catherine.
the amendment on the screen. Councillor De Cruz, how would we prevent non-local pedestrians and vehicles? Well, vehicles would be prevented anyway, but how would we prevent non-local pedestrians from entering the peninsula?
Well, at the same location, you just can't enter. Neither pedestrians nor vehicles can enter. So we're already blockading the street. Pedestrians can't enter unless they're locals.
But how would we police it?
Through the chair?
Yes, Councillor.
No, it's actually the general manager. The reality is that we would be unable to do that. It would require us to direct police to undertake a task that I know they neither have the numbers nor the legal authority to do. So if council was moved to move that amendment and to pass it, I would have no practical way of actually putting it into effect.
Okay,
Isn't that the whole purpose of the motion?
Okay, I'm going to rule that out of order. Councillor Stamos, I'll just explain for you one more time. The only effect of the motion, beyond what the council officers had recommended, is that instead of just discouraging people from attending the parks, that we actually zone them as closed, which will mean that the police have the same move-on powers that they would have had only in the East Balmain parks, in all of the parks, the foreshore parks, thanks to your sensible amendment. So there's nothing in the motion. You can have a good read of it. There's nothing in there that suggests that council can prevent the free movement of people. And to go to one of Councillor Porteous's points, well, I'll address that in my right of reply. Further discussion, councillors. I'll just note that it's 8 o'clock. So if we were hoping to get through the 30 plus items on the agenda, we'll probably need to get past the first one pretty soon. Any more discussion, councillors?
No, I'm just happy we deleted a lot of discussion so we can finish the meeting.
Thanks, councillor. So I'll make a very brief right of reply. Councillor Porteous, thank you for your remarks, and I share your enthusiasm for trying to ensure that there's some semblance of normalcy for local residents and the people of Sydney and New South Wales this New Year's Eve, because it has been such an awful year. And that's why I actually have been trying to liaise closely with the government about ensuring that New Year's Eve could proceed. I've spoken publicly about that. I've supported the government in their plans to try to implement it. I'm just a bit concerned, or more than a bit concerned, that the fact that no care has been taken for the management of safety in the inner west will mean that I'm confident there won't be a COVID outbreak, an uncontrollable one in North Sydney or the CBD foreshore area, but with no controls at all in place, no resources for police, no plan endorsed by the Chief Health Officer. If there's going to be an outbreak anywhere, it's the real danger it'll be in our local community. To put it another way, this is probably the most obvious public health risk that's occurred in our local area throughout the pandemic. So even someone such as myself, who's shared your enthusiasm for ensuring that New Year's Eve could proceed, I think has to look at the evidence, listen to the experts, understand the concern of the police and council officers, and go back to the government and say, this can't proceed on this basis. We need to close off the parks. We need to protect our people. We need to send a clear message that we can't guarantee your safety down here, and what we'd prefer you to do is go and spend your money in local businesses. Will that control everyone's behaviour? Of course not. I've spent many New Year's Eves in Balmain. I think there'll still be a lot of people in Balmain on New Year's Eve, but all the more reason for us to give the police every bit of support that we can for them to sensitively be able to move people on. We've had alcohol-free zones in Balmain and Birchgrove on New Year's Eve for many years now, as Councillor Porteous referred to, and they aren't really a ban on alcohol. Lots of people drink in the parks on New Year's Eve. What they are is a little bit of power for the police to be able to move people on if they've been drinking alcohol for 12 hours and their behaviour is becoming antisocial. And so we need that move-on power in all of our parks this year more than ever. There's no way to compare this year to previous New Year's Eves, given that we know that tens and tens of thousands of people attend Balmain for New Year's Eve. If that happens, it will definitely be unsafe. So we need to try to prevent that from occurring and get people to have a good time somewhere else, given that the government hasn't provided any resources to enable ticketing or QR codes or contact tracing to take place were there to be an outbreak here on New Year's Eve. So I'll put that motion, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Passis. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Passis, Drury, York, Kiat, Lockie, Macri, De Cruz, McKenna, Iskander. And all those against, please raise your hands. Against, I have Councillor Hesse and Councillor Stamoulis have both left the meeting.
No, I'm here.
I can't see you.
Yep, just here.
You in support or against?
Against.
Councillor Stamoulis is against the motion. Councillor Hesse, are you there? No, Councillor Hesse has absented the meeting. So I have against Councillors Stamoulis, Porteous and Steer. That has been carried. Next item, Inner West Council annual grants. Just to move things along, I'll move the adoption of the grants. Is there a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second Councillor Lockie.
Seconded by Councillor Lockie. I'll refrain from speaking. Do you need to speak to it, Councillor? No. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to the item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Passis.
I would like to ask the question, the panel that approves or rejects these grants, is that a panel that is there for the whole duration of this term, or is that panel changed every year?
Put that question to the council officers.
Through the chair.
Oh, yeah, go on.
Do
Sorry.
you want me to talk? Yeah, through the chair. This is Caroline speaking. It changes every year, but the manager who oversees that area would be generally on the panel. And if that manager has continued to be on the panel, has continued to be the manager for the term, they would continue to be on the panel for the duration.
Right.
But they invite experts in. And so they try to have a different group of people every time.
So it's not the same panel members that make the decisions every time these grants come up?
No, and they have different panels for each different round of grants.
Who comprises the panel? Are they local residents or staff?
Generally, it's staff, and then they invite an expert in, and then what they would also do is they would ask particular experts on certain areas to comment. So, for example, if it was a project that related to the Aboriginal community, if the Aboriginal officer was not assessing the grants, they would ask them to comment on the grant before it was assessed.
Do they have to be locals?
Yes, they're locals.
Well, I seem to have, I have concerns, but I'm not going to go into it now.
Oh, sorry, the organisations or the panel members?
Both.
The condition is that they're either a local or they're delivering the project in the area.
Well,
and it has a benefit to the local community.
Yes, well, I'll look at this in the new year because I don't know what policy we have on this. I noticed the same type of group seem to be getting funded every time the grant comes around, and there are many organisations in this local government area that I never ever see their name there. So I'd like to know how this is advertised, or how do we let these organisations know? So many needy organisations. I've been in this area all my life, and yet I have never ever seen one of those organisations as recipients of these grants. There's a lot I would like to ask questions about, but we've deleted items on the agenda because for councillors seem to want to do that. So I'm not going to take up the council's time, but I have concerns about the way these grants are distributed. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. In support, I have councillors Passis, Hesse, Drury, Stamoulis, York, Kiat, Lockie, De Cruz, McKenna, Iskander, Porteous. Councillor Steer, are you in support? Yes. Councillor Macri, are you in support? Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think that's carried unanimously. Is there anyone against? No. Next item.
Mayor, may I move item 3?
Please do.
Simply to thank the committee for their deliberation and endorse the outcome.
Thank you for that.
And I'd like to move the amendments that I've sent to
Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder for the mover?
Councillor McKenna will second it.
I'd like to speak to it, Councillor Byrne.
Do you wish to speak?
So would I, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McKenna, do you wish to speak to it as the seconder?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Porteous.
Yes, look, I was quite disappointed to see the way these names had been presented to council. To be honest, ask yourself a question. Why are the men's names all got their surnames with them, and yet the only woman who's there is given only a first name? So we've got, Warwick Webster, Neville Bayfield, OAM, and then we've got Edna's Pool. I mean, to be quite honest, I find that quite patronising. There seems to be a deliberate sort of mannerism and tone there, which I think is quite disrespectful to the woman that's there. So I would suggest as an amendment that at the very least, we use Edna's full name, which is Wilson, and not just Edna's.
I agree to the amendment as long as you don't speak any further.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porteous. Well said. Further discussion.
Can I move my amendments?
I accept Councillor De Cruz's amendments as long as she doesn't speak.
I have been asked to ask questions about when they could be implemented.
Then I can't accept them. If you ask any questions or speak, I shan't accept them and you'll have to debate them.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Why is Councillor Drury directing 2 of our councillors not to speak and conditioning it upon him accepting or not accepting amendments about whether they speak? What is this rule? Thank you.
Sorry, there is no rule, Councillor Stamoulis. It's a debating tactic in order to try and move things along. It'd be good if a few of us adopted it more often.
It's
Okay, so you accept them and we'll move on.
Okay, they're accepted. That's been agreed. I understand there was discussion between Councillor De Cruz's group and Councillor Drury beforehand to try and ensure, John, that you get home tonight without any more grey hairs.
I value the councillors' discussion.
Oh yeah, me too. No one values it more than me. Okay, we'll move on. So I'll put that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I said I would like to speak on this.
I'm sorry, Councillor Passis. I wouldn't want to cut you out.
Thank you. First of all, I think the committee recommended an interpretive wall showing a timeline from when it was Aboriginal land to the present day. That doesn't seem to be here. Also, I will follow up on the speaker before me, the time frame for this signage and the funding. Where would that be coming from?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Liz here, good evening. As we've outlined in the report, councillors, we don't have a date for the installation of any signage. The signage has not been budgeted for and is not funded. So it would need to be a matter of the Aquatics team working in consultation with the capital team to find some budget, perhaps at a quarterly budget review.
Thanks for that, Liz. The only thing we haven't named is the lights and the gates. I can't understand. I really do not understand why the committee was set up, and we have all our pools named after females. We have none named after males. So it really is wrong. I will accept this. It seems to be that no one has a right to say anything, and Ashfield residents or even Ashfield councillors, we don't get a look in on what happens in our area. I think it's really sad that this council goes on about gender, yet all our pools, most of the pools are named after females, and yet Warwick Webster doesn't get a look in. The grandstand was named after him anyway on the old pool. And this whole exercise has been so political that it is wrong. Pretending you're listening to the residents and then coming up with this, I really think this council really should be ashamed of this whole exercise. Everything was done in the power not to call it the Warwick Webster Centre. I think it's very sad. I think it's very wrong. Names have been bandied about now that were never mentioned. It was never an issue of naming until residents, and a lot of residents and past pupils of Mr. Webster raised it and respectfully requested it to be named the Warwick Webster Pools. And the political games and what went on while that happened is really, I am so ashamed when we are supposed to be open, transparent. This council is so political. It is very, very sad.
Okay, thank you for that. Further discussion? So both the De Cruz amendment, all the amendments have been agreed to. There's no further...
Mr. Mayor, would you please swallow before you talk?
Sorry, Councillor Passis, I don't complain about your speaking habits very often, and when I chair a 6-hour meeting sometimes or a 4-hour meeting.
I understand that, Mr. Mayor, but I'm getting messages from residents. I'm getting messages from residents.
What are them? Can you read them to us?
Tell the mayor to swallow.
Oh, that's...
Point of order. This is disorderly.
I hope it seems disorderly. I hope there wasn't that seemed like some kind of connotation there. I'm not. Anyway.
Mayor, I know you could be hungry. Hand it over to Councillor Macri and then come back.
Okay, that's a fair point. Okay, I'll take that up. I have finished my dinner now, though, so I should be right. Further discussion, councillors. If there's no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor Drury for a right of reply.
There is no need.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Hesse, Drury, Stamoulis, York, Lockie, Macri, De Cruz, McKenna, Iskander, Kiat, Porteous, and Steer, and myself. That has been carried.
I'm against, Mr. Mayor.
I know. Yep, got that. Councillor Passis.
Mayor, may I move item 4?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Drury. First of all, I'm going to take Councillor Passis's advice because I do want dessert. So I'm going to take a break for this item, ask Councillor Macri to take over while I go and have my yogurt and my fruit and nuts, and then I'll come back for the next item.
Okay, councillors, I'm going to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded, Councillor Drury. Discussion.
Councillor Macri.
Yes,
yes,
and myself next.
Yep. Councillor Macri, I'd like to foreshadow exactly the same resolution, but the delegation to be set at 0.5 million. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is that we do need more information coming to council. We do want to understand our contracts and our spending much more effectively than what we currently do. And I say this over and over again. Council's financial situation is under pressure. Council needs to know more about this. We need to know more about our contracts, how they are made, who they are made with, and while we constantly get information back that it's far more expedient to rush these through, get these through fast, we never see in our reports written here words like good oversight, transparency, financial responsibility exercised by the governance board. That's what we need to see more of. And I think that's what our community want to see more of. And I think a handful of these contracts coming to council would not hurt at all. And it's in fact what we are elected to do. And in fact, if it's around about 30 to 40 reports a year that would come to us, that is virtually nothing when you look at the size of those reports that come to us. In fact, we're not looking at very many at all. If they're 1.5 million or above, we aren't looking at many at all. We're not exercising that oversight. We're not exercising financial responsibility as a governance board. We need to be more involved in this, and that's why I'm suggesting 0.5 million. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. May I speak?
Yes.
I agree with Councillor Stamoulis wholeheartedly. Things are coming to my attention about contracts, and we're not fully informed of these things. I initially went along after the new council was elected because we are a large council, we have a large budget, but I believe if we do not support Councillor Stamoulis's amendment, we are reneging on our responsibilities as councillors. We've seen what happened at the Central Coast, and this is no way casting aspersions on the new interim general manager, nor the staff, but I do believe it is our responsibility to sit down and be fully informed on what we're signing our ratepayers' money up to. And we should look at these contracts. We were elected to do this, and all I've been hearing is, let's cut the agenda, let's not have the meetings, let's cut meetings, let's leave all the responsibility up to the general manager and the staff. Well, why do we stand for council? Why are we on council? I have to fully endorse what Councillor Stamoulis has put forward.
Okay. Are there any further speakers? I can't see you all.
Councillor Macri?
Councillor Porteous, yes.
Yes, look, to be honest, I was going to put up an amendment, and actually I think Councillor Stamoulis' foreshadowed motion is more probably an amendment for a 250 limit. The reason for that is that certainly at Leichhardt Council, we had a $150,000 limit, and we managed that very well, I thought, at Leichhardt Council, and we had reasonably good oversight of the contracts that were signed by council. I do think that we do need to reduce this 1.5 million, which is way too high. I think tonight I will support Councillor Stamoulis's foreshadowed motion / amendment. I'm not moving that amendment, minute taker, as I don't want the councillors to have two different amounts to consider. I'd be happy tonight. So remove my amendment, minute taker, please, tonight. I will support Councillor Stamoulis's foreshadowed motion because I think that's a step in the right direction. I do think it needs to be reduced more to 250, but I will support the 500 tonight. Yeah, and I'd urge all councillors to support it. I think we simply don't have enough oversight as to what's actually being, how the money is being spent in this council, and we need to increase our scrutiny significantly, and it must be clearly have been brought home in recent times with what's happened at the Central Coast Council. And in fact, I hope some of the councillors have had a look at also, some of the issues that have been raised with our own council in terms of our financial position and the lack of scrutiny that we also have ourselves over the spending of monies in our council. So yeah, I'll be supporting the foreshadowed motion. In fact, I'm now seconding it. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Jury, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, look, I'll just speak in favour of the recommendation. And let me be really clear and simple about this. If we want proper oversight, then we do that through the budget process and the processes of review, rather than looking at who gets the contracts to do the work. Who gets the contracts to do the work does not give us any further financial control than we do have in setting the budgets for the matters which would go out for contract. That is the key point. What is being proposed here
Point of order. Point of
a
order.
level of is a level of
Councillor
scrutiny and a level of
Councillor Jury,
Point of order.
hold
Yes,
the point of order.
the councillor
What's the
has
point of
moved
order?
a point of
there
order.
is no point of order, I can tell you now.
Councillor Jury,
We're discussing the threshold. That's what we're discussing. Reports do need to come to councillors. They do need to come to
Councillor Stamos.
Councillor Stamos, have you ever looked at the register? The register that's
Councillor
currently
Jury,
up there? No, you have not.
Councillor Jury, just resume what you were saying. Have you finished?
No, I'm just in full flight.
Please, just keep your comments focused on the item.
Well, councillors, there already is a register on the website, a register of all contracts over 150,000. I'm pretty sure that site has got very few hits. If you're that interested in the matter, you can go there and have a look at who has been awarded those contracts. We go through proper processes in terms of tendering for exercises. We have properly constituted bodies that have governance people and have all the rules and regs to actually decide who gets the contract. I think the question of who gets the contract and signing them off does not provide us any further financial control. It just provides an opportunity for certain councillors to filibuster and carry on in relation to each contract as it comes up. And council passes, don't bother interjecting. Don't even bother.
Councillor Jury, please stay on.
I'm there.
Yes, I'd like to
I'm
speak.
still there.
Hold on.
I would like to move a point of order. I seem to be living rent-free in Councillor Drury's head. Why was I mentioned? I did not speak.
Councillor Pass, it's not a point of order. Please,
As
please.
chairperson, will you please tell Councillor Drury not to mention councillors' names? I did not speak. I never said a word.
Thank you, Councillor Passes. Councillor Drury, can you please just stay focused on the item? Have you finished?
No, certainly
You've got
not.
30 seconds left.
I understand that, Chair. Okay. So we have a bigger council. We have more contracts. Simply reducing the delegation will get us looking at a whole lot of decisions of the staff in relation to who gets a contract, not how much we spend, but who gets it. And what is the value of that? What additional oversight do we have with that? I'd urge all councillors who want an efficient council to vote against this.
Now, I heard someone's voice. They wanted to speak. Who was that?
Councillor Steer wants to speak.
Please, please.
Yes, thank you. I understand the arguments for and against. I'd like to point out that under the Local Government Act, there are 21 kinds of delegations that council can make to the general manager. And if council makes all of those delegations, then council has nothing left to do pretty much, except in relation to appointing the general manager. Now, I'm not suggesting that delegation is a bad thing. What I'm suggesting is that we need to really oversee delegation, and we need to be sure of what we're doing. We've had the experience for the last year or so where things were not being brought to council and instead were being put on the website where they were very difficult to find. That is not the point of council scrutiny. The point of bringing things to council is that they are made public, they can be scrutinised by the councillors, questions can be asked, and they are then tabled and put on the record. This is what open government and transparency and accountability is all about. It's about actually making people aware of the information and making them do it. I don't think that by lowering the delegation, it will mean that it will make it more difficult for staff. We have fortnightly meetings at the moment, and we've had them for 3 years. This means that it's a regular timetable for things that could be brought to council in a timely way, and would not be difficult to do. But what we really need to do is remember that where total or a large delegation is made by councillors to the general manager, problems can occur. And this is what happened at Central Coast Council, which has now been discovered to be in debt to the tune of $500 million. And that is because the general manager and the chief financial officer were taking money from council's reserves to pay for council activities and projects and things of that nature. And the councillors were not sufficiently aware to ask the right questions or not given the right information. And the administrator has said very clearly that the councillors were not at fault. We need to be aware, more aware than before. We cannot be complacent. We need to be able to do our jobs, and to do that, we need to be able to have better information and closer scrutiny of things that we're asked to make decisions on, and we need to make those decisions responsibly and in a timely way. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? There's no other speakers. I'll put the amendment up first. And that's to receive and that the report and set the general manager's financial delegation at $500,000. Those in favour? So I've got Councillor Passis, Councillor Hesse, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Kiat, Councillor Steer, Councillor Porteous. Okay, then those against will be myself, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Iskander, Councillor McKenna, Councillor York.
And myself, Councillor Macri.
And Councillor Byrne and Councillor Jury. Can someone had a count on that?
7 all.
7 all. 7 all. Well, then, does the mayor's back, so does he use his casting vote? I suppose he does. Is that correct?
I don't think it makes much difference given we both supported it, Councillor, but I'm happy to rule that it's carried with my casting vote.
Not a problem. Hand over back to you, Chair.
Sorry, that it's defeated with my casting vote.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thanks for that. So that was just the amendment, was it, Councillor Macri?
Correct. Yes, it was.
Okay, I'll now put the primary motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Drury, York, Macri, McKenna, Iskander, Lockie, and myself. All those against? Against, I have Councillors Passis, Hesse, Stamoulis, De Cruz, Councillor Kiat, Steer, Porteous. Can I get a count on that, please?
Was I
That's
marked?
7-all.
I was for the amendment. I think I'm down marked as against.
Well, the amendment was carried, so we can address that later on. But are you for or
No,
against?
could we address it now? Why am I think I'm down as against the amendment. I was for it. I seconded
The
it.
amendment failed.
No, this is the motion, not the actual amendment.
No, but I was for the amendment. Why am I down as against the amendment?
I'll seek a clarification. Is Councillor Passos recorded as being against the amendment?
No, for.
He's been recorded for the amendment.
Yeah.
You right with that, Councillor Passos? Councillor Passos?
Came up on the graft I was against.
That was the motion.
So, Councillor Passos, do you want to be for or against the amendment?
No, she wants to be for the amendment and against the motion.
Okay, well, she's been recorded as being for the amendment.
Correct,
So,
correct. Move on, Chair.
okay. To the substantive motion, all those in favour. Now, we had counted it, bloody hell. Okay, we'll go back and count it again, I guess. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Skip, I could ask for no interruptions this time so that I can actually count the votes. In support, I have Councillors Drury, York, Macri, McKenna, Iskander, Lockie, and myself. All those against? Against, I have Councillors Passos, Hesse, Stamoulis, Kiat, Steer, Porteous. Councillor De Cruz, are you for or against?
Against.
Okay. Can I get a count on that, please?
Mr. Mayor, it's 7-all.
I'll use my casting vote to vote for it. That has been carried.
Can we hear from Councillor Iskander, please?
I'm sure we will at some point, Councillor. I can guarantee you he's here. If you have a look on your screen, you'll be able to find him. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, council meeting and briefing schedule.
I'd like to move a motion, please.
Please do.
Okay, I've got the wording with the minute taker. I'd like to move a motion which amends point 1 and leaves point 2 and point 3 unchanged. The amendment which the minute takers should be able to put up in a minute is basically adding the additional second meeting. So it's the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of every month, which is our current schedule. The reason that...
I second that.
Thank you. The reason that I think that's important that we retain our schedule of 2 meetings a month is because we've really learnt by experience that the 1 meeting a month doesn't cut it when you're trying to work through the business of 3 councils and push them all into 1 meeting. I mean, we've tried, we don't want meetings to go too late, but what we ended up with is lots of extraordinary meetings, business being carried over for far too long from 1 meeting to another. It basically did not work, and I don't see any evidence that anything has changed to make it work now. I would be strongly opposed to us in any way limiting notices of motions from councillors, because it's one of the very few ways that councillors can ensure that issues of importance for their local community actually get on the agenda of council. And I think that we have improved to a certain extent our meeting practice being in our virtual world, and I think we are more disciplined in getting through the agenda, but it's still challenging. It's always challenging, but I would be strongly against in any way silencing any councillor of any political persuasion on this council. I think we are elected, each of us, to represent our local community, and we need to uphold the reasons that we were elected, and that means being able to speak in council meetings on any item that's on the agenda, and to bring items forward through notices of motion which are of concern to our local community. So in the spirit of local democracy, and because we have learnt by experience, I think we have to stick with these 2 council meetings a month, and that I think will enable us to get through the next year in a way which is as ordered as possible, with the systems working for us instead of against us. So I appreciate that General Manager was trying to reduce the workload, but I do think we have to stick to that. Thanks.
Thank you. May I speak?
Yes, Councillor Passos.
Yes, at this new term of council, I recall the Labor Party put forward a proposal that we had support from people that were nominated to support councillors in their workload. I voted against that. Councillors must remember that we are representing nearly 200,000 people. We do not have committee meetings. So comparison with other councils really does not sit well with me, because other councils do have committee meetings. If you really are representing your constituents and new issues that are raised all the time, you cannot expect residents or that to wait around for a month. I believe the time that we're given to even lodge motions is too short, because issues arise that are quite urgent. And if 15 councillors believe that they can truly represent their residents in the proper manner, nearly 200,000 residents at one meeting a month, they must be, I just can't believe, they must be something fantastic. Because even with the 2 meetings a month, all we're told through every meeting is hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Tonight, you can see that we want to delete business that's on the agenda. And whether you think councillors carry on or they talk too much, that's beside the point. Councillors were elected to represent their residents, whatever way they do it. So I really think that this move, the General Manager, okay, he's tried to, he's only been here a very short time, and I think he should sit back and wait when he puts these proposals. I find him very intelligent, and I find a lot of things that he's put forward can be taken on board, but to take away our right to represent residents in the proper manner, whether you want to play the political game or not, that's our role. And if councillors find that it's just too much, you don't want to meet physically, you're at home, well, your bedroom must be very close by, go to bed. But no wonder local councillors do not have the respect of state or federal. Sometimes they sit all night and no one's complaining. And our issues are just as important to our residents as it is to the state and the taxpayers.
Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Passos. Who was that, Councillor Lockie?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Look, I'll move as a foreshadow motion the officer's recommendation, only because it's not a case of for me, that's not about reducing the workload. I think the reality is that we will have a big workload no matter what. That's what we signed up for. It's what we are happy to do on behalf of our residents. And we all do, I think, work very hard on behalf of our constituents. I think I'm probably not, well, I know I'm not alone in being frustrated at the way these meetings have been going, because I've had conversations with lots of you about our desire to have this run better and more efficiently, and to be able to use these meetings to be able to focus on both matters of strategic importance to our community, as well as the kinds of issues that get identified that we've tried to perhaps deal with in other ways, or that for whatever reason a notice of motion is the most effective way to manage that issue. But what we have been doing for the last couple of years is definitely not the most effective way we could be working. If it was, we wouldn't have lots of notices of motion that really could be resolved in much more straightforward ways, perhaps even just by emails some of the time, or conversations that we can have between residents and staff outside of the structure of the council meetings. We wouldn't have a lot of motions that are calling for reports and information and so forth, because we'd be getting those briefings in between the meetings and getting that information we need and being able to feed that back to the community and being able to incorporate that in our decision making. And, you know, I'm tired of being a member of the council where everybody I meet from other councils, our reputation precedes us, and not in the best way. And that's a real shame, because there's lots of smart, dedicated people on this council who want to do the right thing for our residents, but we're just not working effectively at the moment. So I think it's worth a go. We can always try and add on meetings again. We've done it before, as a couple of people have mentioned, if it's not working out. But I think if we don't allow ourselves the space in the schedule to at least give that a go, we're not going to find out whether it could be more effective. And the way the meetings have been running up to this point is the way that they're going to continue, at least until September 2021 and beyond. And I think that would be a real shame for us not to try a different way of working. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Lockie. I've got Councillor McKenna.
That motion, please. Second, Councillor Lockie, please. Mayor, did you hear me? Councillor, can I second?
You can. I was just asking whether you wanted to speak to it. I can't hear you, Councillor McKenna.
Very briefly, just to support what Councillor Lockie has said, the system we're using is not working. We've got far too many meetings where we spend hours of time dealing with trivial issues, and the really issues of really strategic importance to our community are left to the end of the meeting, and we just rush through. We don't really get into the nitty-gritty of making this a better place. It's all minor stuff. And tonight we're dealing with reports which have been answered in the officers' comments, but people still want to speak to them. We don't need all those things on an agenda as just an opportunity for people to speak. So I fully endorse the General Manager's proposal, and I think we should all get into it and try and make it work.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Well spoken. Councillor Stamoulis.
Mr. Mayor, I think most board members and our residents would be well aware that if you cut the meetings in half, you'll cut the information and knowledge flow through to your residents. Your councillors will know half, and most decision making will be behind closed doors. And that is not what our community want. It may be nice to some councillors to escape a meeting a month, but it's not good practice to escape your decision-making functions and what you're elected to do. We have a situation here that we're 3.5, by the time this is adopted, we're 3.5 years into the council, and why you would choose to do this now and not let the next council do it needs explanation. We have far more serious things to do that we don't discuss, things like our organisational structure. We claim that a lot of our council meetings aren't working for the public, but we're not looking at our organisational structure, which is not working for our public. We don't have a head of finance. We don't have a head of environment, and yet these are our two biggest ticket items that we have. We look at the GM delegations on our website. Have a look at those delegations, councillors. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. No other GM in Australia, and there's 530 GMs, would be game enough to put up that list of delegations under our General Manager. And for this notice of motion to appear in front of councillors days before a council meeting shows absolutely a lack of responsibility of our council and our councillors. This is the sort of stuff, if we are having problems with the structure, organisational structure, if we are having problems with our meetings, don't put it up as a motion. You're complaining about notices of motion going up. Well, look at this one. Look at this one here. Why don't we sit together as an executive group and the board together deciding what the best process is for our meetings, what the best structure is for our organisation, what the best set of delegations are, rather than this popping up a political motion to scrap council meetings and cut workloads in half. Possibly it's time for council to decide whether they want to be here for 2021. If they don't want to attend the meetings, maybe you should be making big decisions about whether you actually want to be here in 2021. Some of us do want to do that, and we do want to do our work. Thank you.
Here, well said.
Okay, we're just rounding the corner into the 3/4 mark. Leading up to no, sorry, I'll just call the meeting to order. Just getting on towards 9 o'clock in the evening, and we've dealt with a couple of items so far, but there are 32 or so on the agenda. So,
may I move the motion be put?
Well, I'd like to move an amendment.
So I would hope that any councillor who doesn't need to speak to the item, given we've had such outstanding contributions already, would refrain from doing so. So is there anyone else who needs to speak to the item? Councillor De Cruz, please proceed.
So I've sent an amendment through to Catherine, which thank you is put up on the screen. Look, I think one of the issues we have, and I suppose the New Year's Eve mayoral minute or whatever the first item was, an exact example of this, where we spent an hour discussing an issue which we really can't resolve in a council meeting. So I really do think we need to set up a much better process. If we were going to go to one meeting, we really need, even if we're going to go to 2 meetings, we actually need much more information to councillors. We need better communication processes. We need better structures. We need councillor briefings, workshops. We need to have input into that budget that Councillor Drury said we had insight into. We need committees to consider stuff in more detail before it comes to council meetings. I think we need much more of this kind of structure. Most councils do have committees of council. We don't have any committees of council, which is really quite appalling, because these are the structures we should have set up as a new council. So I'm moving this amendment, and I'd like to move the amendment to both the primary motion and the foreshadowed motion.
I'll second that if you like, Councillor Hesse.
Okay, I'll just go to the mover of the motion to ask whether they're willing to incorporate that amendment into the primary motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to incorporate it.
Okay, that's incorporated into the primary motion. The mover of the foreshadowed motion, you willing to incorporate that?
Yes, because under mine, you'll have time for this briefing.
Excellent. Good point again. All right. So that's been incorporated. Thanks very much, Councillor De Cruz. That's been incorporated into both motions. There's no further discussion. I'll go back to the mover of the primary motion for a right of reply.
Thanks, Darcy. Look, I think it was quite telling, Councillor Lockie's last comment. Yes, because under my motion, you'll have time. I think it's quite concerning that perhaps this has been presented as an either-or kind of proposal, that either you get councillor briefings, more councillor briefings, or you have a second meeting a month. The reality is that we should be able to have both councillor briefings and the regular 2 council meetings a month. One of the really big problems we've got, and I think Councillor Cruz has alluded to this very well, is that we don't have a particularly democratic structure on this council. There seems to be honest, I mean, there seems to have been a very long-standing agenda to dumb down democracy really significantly, and we've lost the capacity of committees to really have any input into council. When was the last time, for example, that we saw a recommendation from any of those committees that have been set up actually come to council for consideration? I don't think I've ever seen one. What reports have we seen on the functioning of the committees? I don't believe I've seen one. The fact is that we don't have committees that function as they should. We only have council meetings where the residents and local businesses are able to come in and have a say on items which council are considering. So we are very bereft of opportunities for the community to be engaging in the democratic process. I'd have to also say that our consultation processes are not always the best they could be, simply from the fact that we rely so heavily on online communications, and we're often excluding people who don't engage in online. So the point is that the council meetings, by holding 2 a month, they give us the opportunity to have more opportunity to engage with our community and to let them engage with us and to let us hear what they have to say. And in terms of briefings, you know, we have other days of the week which we could consider as well. I think that's reasonable, but let's not make it an either or kind of debate, because really, you know, if we're here for our community and we're here because we are committed to the local democracy and engaging in it and promoting it, then we do need to keep these 2 meetings a month. We've learned from experience that's not going to change, but 1 meeting a month is going to be untenable. The only casualty is actually going to be local democracy. But I mean, I don't know, maybe that's what people want. I certainly don't.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Councillor Porteous. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have councillors. Councillor Passos, are you supporting or against the motion?
Seconded it.
Yeah, but you didn't have a hand up. Okay, she's in support. Councillors Passos, Hesse, Stamoulis, De Cruz, Steer, Porteous. Councillor Kiat, where are you on this?
I think he's had to just nip out, Darcy.
Okay, Councillor Kiat's ducked out. All those against the motion? I have councillors Drury, Macri, McKenna, Lockie, Iskander, York, and myself. That has been carried. Sorry, that has been defeated, I believe. Can I just get a count on that?
That's correct, Mayor. 6 for and 7 against.
Thank you very much. I'll put the foreshadowed motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support, I have councillors Drury, Macri, McKenna, Lockie, Iskander, York, and myself. All those against? Councillors Passos, Hesse, Stamoulis, De Cruz, Steer, Porteous. That has been carried. Next item. Now, councillors, we're up to the reports for noting. So given we've got lots of motions to get to and important items in confidential session, I'll ask for your cooperation to deal as quickly as possible with the reports for noting. So they've all been pulled out, which presumably is because a particular councillor in most instances just has some questions. But I'll ask not to have multiple people debating, if possible, if we could avoid it, debating whether to receive and note a report if there's not an alternative proposal. So rates harmonisation.
I move it.
Mr. Mayor, may I speak?
Hold on one moment, Councillor Passos. It's moved by Councillor McKenna. I'll second that. Councillor McKenna, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Neither do I.
Very
Councillor
clear.
Beg your pardon? Oh.
Councillor Passos, you have the floor.
Yes, Mayor, the rate harmonisation community engagement will commence in early December and run through to Sunday, 7th of February 2021. Christmas is coming up, Mr. Mayor, and people have just sort of, let's say, let out a jail card. I think it's going to be a very, very holidaying period for our residents and ratepayers with Christmas, and now that they're relatively free from lockdown. I really think this community engagement time frame is not a good time. Not a good time at all. So I would like to move that starts in February. when people are back on board and start to take notice of the new year and what has to be done. I really cannot see residents interested in this issue over this period.
Councillor Passos, if you recall, when we discussed it previously, there was a specific timeline that we had to meet in order to meet our statutory obligations. And so we deliberately extended the period beyond just Christmas and New Year into February. So I think it would be better to extend the timeline. Like if you want to, don't take it off exhibition, if that's what you're proposing, but rather extend it so that there's an additional period of time that you could specify in an amendment rather than discontinuing the consultation. So
All right, I'll take that on board, extend the time. We seem to always, everything we do, we take it to the wire. And what's put in front of us, we have to move on this. This has to be done as a matter of urgency. Why aren't we given more time on these things? Why are we always behind the 8 ball?
Councillor, I'll put a question to the council officers just to reiterate the timeline that has been specified by the government.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as we've outlined in the report, Council is required to have its application with IPART by the 1st of March in order to set the new minimum rate, which is set, as agreed at the meeting last month, above the minimums of the legacy councils. Okay, so in order to make that deadline of the 1st of March, we have to have completed our community engagement on that new minimum rating and its structure, and also have presented a report to council in order to make that decision. So I can assure you that deadline of the 7th of February is as late as we can get it.
Well, I have to vote against this. I have to really publicise my objections to this, because this is serious.
Councillor Passos, sorry, Councillor Passos, I just put a question to the officers. I did have a further question. I'm happy to continue your time from 1 minute 44, which is what I have on the screen, but I won't have back and forth with them. So did you want to ask more questions at the end?
Why did we leave it so late?
So okay, I'm going to rule then that you've concluded your comments and you just...
That's a question. Why did we leave it so late? Why do we always go down to the wire?
I'll put that question to the officers.
Councillors, this was discussed at length in the briefing sessions that we held with you around this. The principal challenge we have was the I guess, late notification to council of our need to meet the IPART deadline.
So it was the state government, IPART's fault?
We'd been trying to seek clarification on this for some considerable period of time. I'm not here to apportion blame over that, councillors, other than to suggest that there has been an extensive period, an extensive piece of work. As councillors would be aware, this is a very complex policy issue and has taken our finance team some considerable time. And we had been hoping at this for some time that we would get clarity from the New South Wales government that the IPART deadline wouldn't be required.
The case, I believe we tell the state government we need extension. If that is the case, if it's the state government's responsibility.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Passos, no, sorry, Councillor Passos, I'll adjourn the meeting if I need to. I'm not seeking to cut you off. I'm just seeking to keep order in the meeting. On the issue,
Mr. Mayor,
Passos, I will adjourn the meeting if you don't allow me to continue. So please stop interjecting. On the question that you've asked now a couple of times, I think there's been a systematic answer both in the reports we've received and the advice we've just received verbally. So I'm not going to allow more questions about the timeline. That's been addressed and well litigated. Did you want to specify the amendment that you're seeking to move?
Yes, well, my amendment is, given that we've just been told it's the state government's fault, that we contact the state government and tell them we want an extension so we can really consult, give our residents time to consult on this.
Okay, so Councillor Passos, no, sorry, Councillor Passos, you've moved an amendment that we seek an extension from the state government. Is it of 1 month or 2 months or 3 months?
2 months, Mr. Mayor, when they're back on board and their life's getting back to normal again.
Councillor Passos is moving an amendment that we request from the state government an extension of 2 months in the deadline for the consultation with the community. Is there a seconder for that amendment?
Yes, I'm happy to.
Seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. I assume you don't need to speak to it, Councillor Stamoulis, because Councillor Passos has addressed it so well. So if there's no further discussion, I'll just ask Councillor McKenna whether you're willing to incorporate that amendment or whether it should be voted on.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so we'll vote on that amendment. It's moved by Councillor Passos, seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Passos, Stamoulis, De Cruz. Councillor Steer, are you in support?
Yes, I am.
De Cruz. Councillor Kiat, are you there? No. Councillor Porteous, are you there? No. Okay. All those against the amendment, please raise your hands. Against, I have Councillors Hesse, Drury, Macri, McKenna, Lockie, Iskander, York, and myself. That has been.
Mr. Mayor, are you against giving your residents extra time?
Call the meeting to order. So that has been defeated. I'll now put the primary motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I have Councillors Hesse, Drury, Stamoulis, Macri, De Cruz, McKenna, Lockie, Iskander, York, Steer, Kiat, and myself. All those against? Against, I have Councillors Passos. Just Councillor Passos, I think. That has been carried. Brings us to the next item. I'll just restate my request for anyone who doesn't need to speak to a report for receive and note not to do so. We've got the Whites Creek Wetland. Who wanted that one called out?
Yeah, I've got a question. Well, does this have to be before I ask the question?
What's your question?
Question was whether there's a maintenance procedure in budgeted for, because this work was carried out at the request of the community when they reported that the silts had just built up in the ponds. Could the relevant officer comment on whether the wetlands have a regular maintenance program, an annual maintenance program?
Put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, I believe so, but I will take that question on notice and provide further advice.
So I'd actually suggested an amendment then that a regular maintenance procedures be put in place for the wetlands in the council operations and budget.
Okay, so Councillor De Cruz is moving that the report be received and noted, and that.
Oh, hang on. Are we still on wetlands or are we on shade cell?
No, we're on wetlands. So Councillor De Cruz is moving that the report be received and noted with an additional amendment. Have you provided that to the minute taker, Councillor?
I've just sent that. I've just sent it.
Okay, can we get that on the screen, please?
Mayor, do we have a mover?
Councillor De Cruz.
Happy to move it.
Councillor De Cruz is the mover.
Oh, she's the mover, righto.
Councillors, I thought item 7 was moved on.
Councillor Stamoulis' motion.
Sorry, hold on.
Originally.
Hold on. Thank you very much for that intervention, Liz. Item 7 has been moved in bulk, so there's no need to debate that. But now there's some confusion as to whether we're debating item 8 or item 7. It was item 7. That's redundant because that's been adopted. Thanks very much for reminding us of that, Liz. And then we've got item 8, shade sale program. Who brought that forward?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation with the amendment that I circulated to councillors.
Okay, can we provide that on the screen? And do you want to speak to it, councillor?
I'll reserve my right.
Can I second it?
Seconded by Councillor McKenna.
And I'll reserve my right.
Excellent. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the motion to receive and note? and investigate the installation of shade sails or coverings at AAC? No? I'll put that. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I believe that's everybody. Is there anyone against? No, that's carried unanimously. Next item, 9, that's been moved and adopted. So we're up to 10, damage to council property. Who brought that one forward?
I did, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Passos.
It's a report on a motion I brought up. In the discussions on the second last paragraph on page 93, it says the proponent did not notify Council of Works in Arthur Street. Council is currently liaising with them and their subcontractor in order for Council to complete the final restoration. How does the system work? How do these different service providers just come in and dig up our streets without notifying Council? Shouldn't Council be working in tandem with them with traffic control signs and
Sorry, Councillor Passos, you've asked a question. I'll put that question to the officers.
Through the chair, we have various utilities that do works in the Inner West Council area, and they are permitted to do so under various acts, state government and federal government acts. They are supposed to notify council. Some of the utilities are very good at that, and some of them are not so good. But we do try and chase those utilities who have not given us notification to get that relevant information to council.
have we taken action against these people and the ones that do not notify council? What is the question?
Well, I think that's a very broad question, Councillor.
No, well, I want to know what's our policy. Can somebody just come in and dig up our footpaths after we've just put them in, and they don't suffer any consequences for that?
I think that's largely a function of state legislation, but I'll put that as a question to the officers.
Through the chair, yes, they are legally permitted to come in and do their works.
Without notifying council?
No, they are supposed to notify council, but some are better than others.
What do we do when they don't notify us?
Chair.
I'll call the meeting to order. Sorry, I've got a point of order. Yes? So I believe
Councillors, residents might raise this with you. Don't you want to know what to tell the residents?
Call the meeting to order. Sorry.
We do know what to tell them. We've been listening before.
Chair, these are generic issues that should be discussed in a conference situation, which is exactly where we should be discussing this.
I'm sorry, I really don't like being attacked. And on behalf of ratepayers, I am asking for questions. We've received the report. I'm following up. I want to know what action have we taken and can we take when they do not notify us?
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Passos, I'll issue you with a warning. Please stop interjecting when I'm seeking to call the meeting to order. I'll ask you to desist from your interjections or I will have to warn you again. So I've issued you one warning.
Mr Mayor, where did I interject?
You were just
the other councillors, Councillor Macri and Councillor Drury did.
Again now. I think I said I'll call the meeting to order. My count was 6 or 7 times, but it could have been 9 or 10 while you were speaking. So I'll ask you again to desist from interjecting. It is my intention to make sure that we get through the business tonight, but I won't be able to if you continue to do that. So where were we up to? Councillor Passos, I think your line of questioning has concluded, hasn't it? There's not an additional specific question that you wanted to ask?
No, Mr Mayor, I was interrupted by 2 councillors that you did not call to order. I will take on board what you said. You're running the show.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Macri was moving a point of order. Councillor Drury made an interjection, but it was about 1/10 as long as the one that you just made. So
it was still an interjection.
Yes, I know, but you don't have a monopolistic power over interjections in the meeting. Other councillors do them as well. So let's move on. So we'll move on to the adoption of the motion, I believe. There's no one else who wishes to speak to it. Is there a mover and a seconder? Sorry, I've just lost track.
No.
Okay, is anyone going to?
I'll move it. Councillor Steer.
Steer will move the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor De Cruz. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. That brings us to item 11.
I'm against because I didn't get all the information.
The Councillor Passis is to be recorded as voting against. That brings us to item 11, notice of motion to rescind item 3, adoption of Leichhardt Park Plan of Management. Which of the movers of the rescission motion would like to speak to it first?
Well, I may as well speak to it first, Mr. Mayor.
Please do. That's Mayor Concrete to you, though.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds all right. Look, fellow councillors, we've heard a number of concerns tonight from our community. There has been very little consultation about this. There has been huge public opposition to this site. Councillors haven't seen the concept plans, and I don't even think some councillors have even seen this site. We've had a tender go out, I believe, in January that nobody has seen. And I think we're basically come to a situation where many in our community see this as the wrong site. Leichhardt Park already has little opportunity for community recreation. Only a few years ago, we saw a childcare centre built there and now a skate park proposal. It has 3 ovals, an aquatic centre, a childcare centre, bay run, sports and fitness, an event centre and multiple car parks. Now, a tiny piece of foreshore green space seems to be too much to keep for our community. I wonder why. This community has to sit back and watch its open space and trees removed by its own council for any proposal that comes along. This community is overlooked and is given no voice. Every proposal for use of their community park is secondary to any other proposal. No other part of our community would accept that. This space, councillors, softens the built surroundings. It enhances the foreshores. It softens the bitumen paths and surfaces around it. And councillors, our green space is like gold. We have so little of it in our municipality. We have the 2nd or 3rd lowest ratio in New South Wales. When council builds over it, where can we find more? Council can't buy any more. Land is far too expensive. We can no longer look at green spaces as development sites, as wasted spaces, particularly those sites on our foreshore. Never before in the inner west have we witnessed or seen what we're witnessing down there with 35 or more trees marked with pink X's for removal. Our council talks about tree canopy, tree protection, urban heat island effect, and yet we're doing something astounding that's never been seen before in the history of our council. Many of us are still asking how and why this location was chosen for a skate park in the first place. We have overwhelming community support for a skate park. We have huge support to retain this small piece of space for that community and for all of our community and within Leichhardt Park. All that we're asking is for alternative sites for the skate park be investigated first. That's what our community would like. Investigate alternative locations. I would ask that you support the rescission motion to allow that to take place, and also when that site is chosen, that we do the appropriate thing and run it through a DA process so that the community is aware of what's going on. It goes through the proper process and consultation takes place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Stamoulis. Since that issue of consultation has been raised again, I will, as I'd indicated earlier, before going to the other movers of the motion, just ask the council officers to outline the consultation and notification process that's occurred in relation to this project from the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As with all of our plans of management, the Leichhardt Park Plan of Management has been developed with a robust and comprehensive engagement strategy. The skate park is obviously a key component of that plan of management. So the development of the Leichhardt Park Plan and Management started with an initial round of engagement for a period of 6 weeks over June and July of 2019, at which point we were simply garnering community input into the plan, and with a range of, engagement strategies at that point, including drop-in sessions. The engagement at that point, we had 1,300 visits to our online page, with mixed feedback, so both for and against the location of the skate park at that time, but 3/4 were in support. So following the initial development, we moved through and we developed the draft master plan and plan of management, and that was then subject to engagement again from November 2019 through till February of this year. Again, the skate plaza was clearly identified in that master plan and plan of management, and we received over 130 pieces of individual feedback from the community about the master plan. So that then triggered, and we sent that to council, and that had then been endorsed in principle. Following endorsement by the minister, the plan was again subject to exhibition from the 12th of September to the 12th of October this year. And that was our engagement there included signage in the park, promotion through our social media and e-news channels, our website, and also importantly, direct stakeholder engagement with key stakeholders via email. And again, we received 65 responses with a variety of responses on the skate park issue. So I think it's fair to say that we've been very open and transparent with the community about the skate park and its location, and we've continued to communicate those engagement outcomes through the development of the plan of management.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Which of the other movers of the rescission motion would like to second the motion?
I will, Councillor.
Please proceed.
Look, I haven't been down there very much, and I think Councillor Smilis's point is a really serious one, that I'm not even sure that very many of the councillors are aware of that location. I went down on Sunday in response to the community posting photographs of trees, the trees that were marked for removal. And I was really surprised to see quite a medium-sized gum tree. And people are talking about, oh, well, you just replace a gum tree, you just replace the trees and you're planting. I think what we're forgetting is that trees take a significant amount of time to grow, and we just can't keep replacing them with little twigs, which is what we actually are doing all over the LGA. So I think it's a really serious problem and a disconnect in our community where they can accept the removal of trees, the removal of green space, in the belief that you put a piece of concrete there, which you're not actually going to be able to use because it's going to be so stinking hot. The location is quite shocking. I mean, people have suggested that it's a location for children to learn to skate and cycle, surrounded on 3 sides by roads. I mean, that in itself is a really, really high risk. There's no public transport. It's poor access. So you're going to have even more cars driving into a very, very busy area. And I know I supported the plan of management, but I'm really, really disappointed at the amount of land that's been allocated to car parking and to improving car flow, traffic flow through what is supposed to be open green space. We know that during COVID, how popular the Bay Run was and the issues down there about managing people and social distancing. The Bay Run is phenomenally popular, and to add more into this tiny little area is quite shocking, and the loss of trees is really sad. So I think we do need to consult with our community. I'm surprised we couldn't find any other better spot for this skate park. I know it's been going on for so long, and it's a very, very small skate park or plaza or whatever you like to call it. It's half the size of the Sydenham and half the size of other places. So I think it's neither here nor there, and the loss of trees and green space of passive recreation and nature immersion is a tragic loss to our community. So I hope councillors will support the rescission of this plan of management. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Before I go to the other movers, just to address a couple of the questions that Councillor De Cruz has raised, can I ask the officers to outline what the tree planting budget and program is for the Inner West Council for this financial year? And then secondly, what assessment process was undertaken for other sites within Leichhardt Park in putting forward the recommendation for this site?
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not exactly sure of the tree planting budget, but it's in excess of $3 million. In terms of the process that we've taken in choosing this location, you'll recall that the former Leichhardt Council and now Inner West have been attempting to find a location for a skate park north of Parramatta Road for over 10 years now. So previously, 2 locations at Callan Park have been investigated and designs prepared, and those locations did not progress. At a council meeting in October 2018, a report was presented to council with 4 possible alternative sites for a skate park, and that included looking at the opportunities and risks associated with the identified sites. In relation to a possible skate park next to Leichhardt number 3, the report to council did note that there would be a substantial loss of trees, and that would be balanced with overall landscape improvements as part of the project. And I note at the meeting on the 30th of October 2018, the council at the time did unanimously resolve to proceed to undertake community engagement on a skate park at Leichhardt number 3. So based on that, council staff went ahead and prepared the plan of management as Liz has outlined. We've also commenced the preparation of a review of environmental factors to inform a Part 5 SEP infrastructure determination. And at the moment, that's been put on hold pending this rescission motion. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Porteous, did you wish to speak to it as well as one of the movers?
Yes, look, apologies, I had to briefly leave the meeting. Could I just get a clarification? What I'm seeing here is a notice of motion to rescind. I'm not seeing a motion to be adopted should that rescission motion be successful. Is that correct? That's correct.
Could I ask the minute takers to display the proposed motion which was tabled as part of the rescission motion? There you go, Councillor Porteous.
So just to clarify, has Councillor Stamoulos moved that motion there, which is different to the one on the papers?
That will be dealt with subsequent to the rescission motion if the rescission motion is carried, as you know.
Okay. Look, I've circulated to councillors my thoughts on this, which have been consistent. Basically, my concern is that we need to do a proper assessment of the skate park and ensure that the residents have the opportunity to participate in the assessment process for the skate park. I was trying to get the conditions of approval of the skate park when some of the residents and local businesses contacted me, and I was unable to get those conditions of consent. I was told that the consent had been obtained through an infrastructure SEP, but I think that in fact that is now happening. So there is not actually consent in terms of development consent for the skate park as it stands. What I want to see is that instead of using the equivalent of an infrastructure SEP, that we actually use the equivalent of a development assessment consent, which enables the community to have a say. It also means that the environmental assessment is put out for public participation and public engagement, and you can make a submission. Because the problem with the process with the infrastructure SEP is that it doesn't actually allow there's no communication with the community at all, that it's even occurring, no seeking submissions, no opportunity to make submissions. It's done entirely by the council staff, and it entirely excludes the community and councillors, obviously, from from having any kind of say in that process of assessing the site. So my interest is actually in ensuring that that occurs. And I have sent through to the minute taker a motion, which I would like to be the motion that is considered should the rescission motion be successful. If the and if that needs to be a foreshadowed motion, then
Sorry, Councillor Porteous, I'm not going to give you the opportunity to move a motion that we're not debating at this stage. So thank you for letting us know that you've circulated that, but I'm chairing the meeting, so I'll take motions at that time if the rescission motion is passed. As you know, you're required at this stage to speak to the reasons for rescission, which you've articulated. So I'll move on to further speakers.
May I speak?
Councillor Passis.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm one of the councillors that Councillor De Cruz said is probably not aware of this area, and I will say that I am not. And first, let me state, I do not know or have met the owners of La Montage. But I think the way this person has been treated in the press is absolutely horrendous. I do not know why his customers had to be brought up in the press. If a business person has no right to object to something without people going through who patronises his business, I think we must be very, very afraid. This man that has lifted that area up to such an extent that you can be proud of Leichhardt has been vilified to such an extent. Now, I will also put, I sympathise with the residents who have waited for 10 years.
Councillor Passis, I'll move a warning if you don't desist. I'll call you to order. Respectfully, Councillor Passis, I'll ask you to remain relevant to the rescission motion. The only thing that you should be speaking.
I will speak to that. I really sympathise with the people that have been waiting 10 years for a skate park. You, Mr. Mayor, and another councillor on this present council were both mayors at the time. To keep putting up inappropriate areas only to know that they'd be rejected. I remember what happened to the people of Haberfield with the netball court.
Sorry, Councillor Passis, I'm now going to call you to order and ask you to discontinue your remarks. I'll give you one last chance to remain relevant to the reasons for rescission. Otherwise, I'll discontinue your remarks, and if you interject...
Well, they are, my reasons for rescission are not one hard copy of information was sent out to residents. As Councillor Porteous has said previously, not everybody uses the electronic systems. This is a serious issue, and I am sure there's a lot of my residents who contact me daily would love someone to go down and put crosses on the trees that are destroying their properties. But we can just go down and paint crosses on willy-nilly, and yet we've got residents that are reduced to tears and paying a lot of money to have trees removed that are wrecking their properties.
Sorry, Councillor Passis, I'll call you to order. I am going to, that's 3 times that you've not been relevant. So the next time that you do that, I will issue a second warning, Councillor Passis. I'll now move on to other speakers on the item.
Chair.
Councillor Macri.
Chair, I think no one on this council is against getting a skate park put into Leichhardt. I think it's supported, and I've supported it all the way. The issue is, on close examination of this location, I just find that it's not suitable. The fact that it has been said before, and I don't want to repeat it, but it's bounded by 3 streets. It is very busy on the weekends when those functions are on. It's very busy when there's a game of football on. It's very busy when other sports are on, with motor vehicles trying to park everywhere. And the proximity to the actual streets, the temptation for the skateboard riders to take risks riding down the hills really, really concerns me. I think the safety aspects of this site really compromises it. And I think that's the only decision. And, you know, I'll put my hand up and say, yep, I didn't fully understand the implications of supporting the motion in that location, because I thought I was voting to allow a skate park in the park, not at that specific location. I'm happy to support it somewhere else. But I think in this location, I don't think we can make that mistake. And I just think it's community safety as far as the actual participants that are going to be there. And it's a bit of a conflict with the business that's there. And we did hear from the very eloquent speakers their concerns about the engagement process. And it was a difficult time for staff during the whole COVID process to actually engage the community in a real meaningful way. And online is one thing. I would have expectations of actual setting up at the park and telling people this is what's going to happen, and, you know, garnishing the feedback of the people on the ground and the users. So the users that are there, that's what I believe meaningful consultation is. And that's what I think was lacking, and not through staff's fault, not through anyone's fault. It was COVID, it was difficult. And I just think if we're trying to force this through, it's going to be difficult. That's why I can't support it. Thanks, Chair.
Further discussion? I think I've got Councillor Kiat.
Yeah, I don't think so. I didn't put my hand up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake. I thought you were speaking to it. Further discussion, councillors? There's no further discussion. Okay. Well, I'll just momentarily I'll go back to the mover, to Councillor Stamoulis, for his right of reply. I'll just speak very briefly to the matter. I want to say at the outset that I understand and respect the opposition of the residents who spoke tonight and Mr. Navarra. And whilst I disagree with their position in regards to the skate facility, I hold no quarrel with them for advocating for their interests. Which is, you know, we all know that if you approve a facility for young people anywhere, there will be some opposition to it. There's a very long history of that with skate parks, which is why we've been going for 10 years without getting one approved. So thank you to them for their contributions. And I can see which way the wind's blowing, and it's quite clear that the skate park will be cancelled tonight, based on my assessment of the contributions that people have made so far. I think it's useful to provide just a little bit of context. Essentially, what's occurred at all the locations in Callum Park is that the council's nominated the locations, but then the Friends of Callum Park have been opposed to the locations that the council has nominated and have undertaken lobbying efforts with the New South Wales government and the Heritage Council to have each of those separate locations discontinued.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Stamoulis, could you please refer to the code of meeting practice for your point of order?
Your reference to Friends of Callum Park is out of order.
Can you refer to the code of meeting practice, councillor?
It's not relevant to the debate.
Okay, I'm just well, I think it is, so I'll rule that that's not out of order. Anyway, either way, I'll move on. As we all know, the Friends of Callum Park's been headed very famously by Hall Greenland, the former Greens candidate for Grainler, and the former New South Wales Greens convener. And so, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get the skate park approved in Callum Park. And it's true that I've been advocating for it, but lots of other people have been as well. So I don't want it to be depicted as something that was simply my policy. It was part of the Callum Park master plan. It's something that everyone's notionally agreed with. There's just been very few people other than myself who've consistently stood up for each location that it's been proposed. And in this instance, I guess what I just find very confusing is I understand the opposition now from the councillors who opposed the skate park at this location in the first instance. So that they've got the advantage of consistency. I really don't understand the councillors who voted for the application only 3 weeks ago in order to approve it, and who are now potentially going to change their position and vote for its rescission. I'm quite confused about that because nothing's really occurred between now and then other than the very forceful and effective advocacy campaign from the venue next door. So that obviously that's not a justification in and of itself for changing a legitimately approved children's play facility. So I really am a little bit discombobulated or confused, find it hard to understand why some councillors who voted for it then are now about to change their position. That's a great victory for Navarra venues, obviously. And as I just want to restate the legitimacy of their advocacy for their commercial interest. But gee, it'd be disappointing for the young people and the families who've advocated for the facility. The truth is that the young people who advocated for it originally in 2010 and 2011, most of them are young adults now, but they do have younger brothers and sisters who still want to see the facility located somewhere in Leichhardt. I just conclude by saying that what I do push back against and take disagreement with is the suggestion, and I know it's no one's deliberate inference, but it comes across sometimes in the debate that young people are in some way a danger or something that we should seek to segregate away, or that they don't have legitimate rights as citizens in our community. They don't turn up to council meetings, but they actually have the same rights as everybody else. And in my view, providing facilities that they can use in the public domain is good for public safety and public health, not bad. So I disagree on principle with anyone who tries to assert otherwise. I'll leave it at that, and I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for his right of reply.
Mr. Mayor, first of all, I'd like to say I commend you for a long-standing support and your attempts to deliver a wonderful solution for the youth of our area and wider area, and that being a skate park. I commend you for that. What we're finding this location is causing great division, angst, and hurt in our community. And we're not saying that we should not deliver a skate park, and also we should not say we're going to remove beautiful foreshore green space, because I know 80 to 90% of skateboard people would go straight to that site, look at those trees marked with an X, and I'm sure, to use the words of Councillor De Cruz, they would be saddened and disappointed. I know that about them, and you know that about them. And I know the people of that particular area want to preserve that small piece of space that they use. They've had so many things proposed in their area. They would love to preserve that foreshore space. All that we're saying is we have a situation of great division. We do want to deliver that wonderful outcome which you've initiated, Mr. Mayor, but in the face of what we're seeing, this great division and hurt, can our council review this, look at it, and do something for our people so that both sides are satisfied with? They can see that their council is showing great commitment and honesty and integrity towards them on both sides, and I believe that can be done. So why wouldn't we want to do this? Why wouldn't we just want to look again very carefully and make a commitment that we will deliver a final report by March next year, so that we are being honest to both groups? Why can't we make that commitment and deliver early next year in March to say, here's a location we've found, here's what we can do, here's how we can satisfy the interests of all concerns. We can turn this into a non-divisive or undivisive positive approach if the councillors will to do so. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I'll now put the rescission motion moved by Councillors Stamoulis, De Cruz and Porteous. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have Councillors Passis, Hesse, Stamoulis, Macri, Porteous, De Cruz, Kiat and Steer. All those against, please raise your hands. Against, I have Councillors Drury, McKenna, Lockie, Iskander, York, and myself. That has been carried. So we'll now move on to the proposed motion from Councillor De Cruz, Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor De Cruz. And Councillor Stamoulis, I'll ask you again to speak to the motion that you've tabled.
Mr. Mayor, I've largely spoken to that motion, so I'll reply at the end. Thank you.
Councillor De Cruz.
Sorry. I'd like to speak as well, Councillor Byrne.
Well, after I've heard from the seconder. Councillor De Cruz, do you wish to speak to it?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I might briefly just move a foreshadowed motion, which is for the readoption of the Leichhardt master plan.
Point of order. Point of order. I already indicated that I had a foreshadowed motion. You're deliberately trying to not allow me to move my foreshadowed motion so that you move yours. I made it very clear I had a foreshadowed motion.
Sorry, Councillor. I'm afraid that you'll find that I also had prepared a foreshadowed motion. And
well, you didn't say anything about it. I did say something about it.
Sorry,
it may have been in your head, but it wasn't. It wasn't
not
spoken.
required to announce to you my intention as chair.
Well, I did announce to you my intention.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Councillor Porteous. As you know, multiple motions can be moved, but only two can be tabled at a time. So I'll table a foreshadowed motion, which is the readoption of the Leichhardt Park master plan with the minus the skate park, and I'll just liaise with the minute takers about the correct wording on that. And I'll speak to that very briefly. Councillors, you'll be aware that in rescinding the Leichhardt Park master plan, all of the other components, in addition to the skate park, have now been rescinded and have no status. That was one of the things I found most concerning about this motion. So I'm going to refrain from speaking to the substance of the skate park, but I'll just remind councillors that both the Balmain para rowing facility, which had been approved in the master plan, and the improvements to Leichhardt No. 2 sporting field, which a number of local young people have attended council meetings to speak in support of, are now null and void as well. And so, putting aside our difference of opinion on the skate park, it is important that the plan of management is actually readopted. It has no status under the primary motion. We'll never, under what has been tabled by Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor De Cruz, actually adopt a Leichhardt Park plan of management because it's not referenced in their motion, which I found very unusual. So I'll move that way. Is there a seconder for that foreshadowed motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
It's seconded by Councillor Macri. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's a good way forward, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Councillor Porteous.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, for finally giving me the opportunity to speak. Look, I'm very pleased that you've taken up my motion, which, as you know, because it was circulated to all of the councillors beforehand, that the plan of management for Leichhardt Park be readopted by council. However, I would ask that you also take up the second part of my motion, which is that we see a proper development assessment process done for the skate park. I believe that a lot of these issues can be resolved if we go through a proper development assessment process, which, as you know, was what we did all of the time with Leichhardt Council for any kind of contentious development on Crown land. And it's unfortunate that this hasn't happened on this occasion, but it can be resolved. I've spoken to council staff, and we can do all of the same assessment as would happen in a normal development application, which is called a Part 4 development application, and ensure that there's full assessment of the environmental assessment, there's full participation, the public has the opportunity to put in submissions. And I'd like to see us do that on this skate park. I think that it should be done at the location which is currently being nominated in the plan of management. It should be retained in Leichhardt Park, but this assessment needs to go through on that process. I think just leaving without a nominated location for the skate park is not the way forward. So I would like to move as an amendment that be adopted.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I think one way to address that, Councillor, I'm certainly happy to incorporate the primary motion into the foreshadowed motion. So that would ensure that there was a DA process, as has been stipulated in your tabled rescission motion, which went out with the business papers. So I assume that's to your satisfaction. So I'll incorporate those points into the foreshadowed motion. And we can still deal with your amendment if you like, but you'd have to explain to me what the difference would be between that and either the primary motion or the foreshadowed motion.
Sorry, I'm unclear about what exactly you're proposing, Councillor Byrne.
The wording that you tabled in your rescission motion as the
I didn't table wording in a rescission motion. That's Councillor Stamoulis's wording.
Hold on.
I supported the rescission motion though, yes.
Well, sorry, it's your wording. It's your name that was put to it.
Yes, I supported this rescission motion.
So I'm seeking to incorporate your motion into the foreshadowed motion. So that will result in a DO process. I don't know why there'd need to be a different formulation of words.
Well, this is the wording that I have from the council staff, which I suspect, which...
Yeah, Mr Mayor, if I may outline that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, councillors, what the wording that I have provided with Councillor Porteous this afternoon sets up a process whereby the application continues its assessment under the Infrastructure SEP and under Part 5 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, because having received legal advice this afternoon, Council is unable to lodge a development application for the skate park because it is already covered. It's already covered by Part 5, so you can't have either or. Council doesn't get to pick and choose which stream it goes down. So what we had suggested to Councillor Porteous was that it simply takes the same community engagement and public participation and environmental assessment process as a DA, but is dealt with under Part 5.
I'm not sure I'm entirely clear on all of that, but let's keep going, see how we go. So, yeah. Councillor Porteous, maybe the quickest way to resolve this, Councillor Stamoulis and Councillor De Cruz, are you satisfied to accept Councillor Porteous's amendment as an amendment to the primary motion, as a replacement for the primary motion?
No.
Right. Can I ask you to explain your interpretation of the difference between the two?
Mine's to find an alternative location.
Right. Okay. I see. All right. Well, I will incorporate the Porteous amendment into the foreshadowed motion. It won't be incorporated into the primary motion. Further discussion, councillors?
Can I just clarify? Sorry. I was just going to ask a question, but I don't mind.
Councillor Lockie.
So can I just clarify, because a couple of questions. Councillor Porteous's motion refers to Part 4 development application, but Liz was talking to Part 5, and I gather this is quite technical stuff. So what is it supposed to say?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Porteous's motion is correct. So what she is saying is that the assessment that we go through must be the same as the requirements for a Part 4 development application.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I just thought I'd clarify that. And so can I just clarify as well? I'm not sure if this is to officers or it might be to Councillor Byrne or Councillor Porteous. So the intention here is, with the new foreshadowed motion, the skate park would remain as is. The rest of the plan and management can go ahead as is, but we just do a different assessment. Slightly different assessment process to what we were going through before. Is that broadly correct?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Basically it means that we assess the skate park in the location that's been nominated in the plan of management, but we go through a full assessment process. So things like the removal of the trees will be fully assessed. The times of operation, when we use the lights, don't use the lights, traffic and management, all those are things. And as it was proposed, there wouldn't have been the opportunity for people to make a submission, or in fact even to be notified about the assessment proceeding and to be told what the assessment was on. Now they get the opportunity to do that, and so there's basically a full assessment of the of the development that's being proposed on that site, which gives it a lot more scrutiny than it's had up until now.
Thank you for that.
Can I just ask one more question, Councillor Byrne? Sorry, that's come out of that. So obviously, with a DA a standard DA, that could be refused. Is it likely, if it goes through this process, that skate park location would be refused based on the outcome of that assessment process?
Oh, I don't think it would be appropriate, councillors, for us to preempt any of the assessment process there. The infrastructure team will go through a serious and exhaustive process of gathering technical reports and all of that sort of thing. And needless to say, if that doesn't come back satisfactory, the project won't proceed.
Okay, that's the answer to my question. Thanks, Liz.
Yep.
Okay, can I just ask a couple of other questions just while I've got you there, Liz? Could you just explain for us how frequently and in what circumstances does council make use of this infrastructure SEP normally?
The overwhelming majority of our infrastructure projects are delivered using the infrastructure SEP. So I don't know, 98, 99% up in that sort of vicinity are used, completed using the infrastructure SEP and its powers. It's all fairly common and standard practice right across the local government sector.
Sorry, just for clarification, you say 98%. Could you name just a few examples that councillors might be aware of projects that were approved through the infrastructure SEP?
I'm aware that the Sydenham Green Skate Park was approved under the infrastructure SEP, along with a whole host of our day-to-day bread and butter projects as well. So things like our footpaths, road resheetings. Perhaps Kathy, you might have more that you might want to chip in on. We're working on.
Yes, through the chair, like all of our parks upgrade projects, the Greenway project, almost all of our projects are undertaken under SEP infrastructure. In fact, it'd be easier to name the ones that are done under DA, which are the really big ones like Ashfield Pool, Haberfield Library, things like that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I might just for the sake of clarity, just confirm that I'm indicating my willingness to incorporate Councillor Porteous's proposal because I'm so concerned that this project will never proceed. And I've said this to everyone I've spoken to on all sides of the debate since last week. Don't lie to people. Sorry to call it a lie, but let's not mislead people here. If the already approved location for the skate park has been rescinded, to pretend that it will just automatically be approved somewhere else, or that this group of councillors will vote to submit a DA somewhere else, goes against all of the history that we've seen of this project. So let's just have the courage of our convictions, be honest with people. It's very unlikely, given that the way that this campaign's been effective tonight, very unlikely that this is going to be approved in that location. Councillor Stamoulis is proposing a completely different location, unspecified. No surprise there. But I'm willing to incorporate Councillor Porteous's amendment to keep hope alive. But given the amazing overturning of the vote from 3 weeks ago, I want to be clear with the public that they shouldn't have and can't have any confidence at all that this group of councillors is capable of approving this project anywhere in Leichhardt Park or in Leichhardt, and we've got to at least be honest with the kids about that. So that's the reason for my incorporation of Councillor Porteous's amendment. Further discussion, councillors?
Councillor Byrne, yeah.
Councillor Kiat.
First of all, I've got a question through you to the relevant officer. If the foreshadowed motion based on the wording proposed by Ms. Richardson was adopted by council, would there be any necessity for council to consider the item further, or would it just proceed and the DA or the planning process be done by council officers with no further input required from councillors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the intention there would be simply for staff to proceed.
Right. Thank you. I think that's a sensible course. I want to speak in support of the foreshadowed motion. I think, like a lot of issues that come up in the old Leichhardt LGA, the politics on this issue have been more heat than light. It's just been suggested that there's been a successful campaign to all but kill this skate park project. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there has been a very minor procedural change to how this project will proceed in the same park. And that's on the assumption that the foreshadowed motion succeeds, which I'll be supporting. I think that all councillors should support the foreshadowed motion, which was proposed by Councillor Porteous, and I don't think councillors should support the motion that has been proposed.
Sorry, just to call you to order, perhaps you're confused. I've moved a foreshadowed motion for the readoption of the Leichhardt Park Master Plan, which wasn't tabled in Councillor Porteous's rescission motion. And then I've incorporated...
Actually, it was. That is.
It was.
That's part of my motion, Councillor Byrne.
The wording there is exactly the wording that was proposed by Councillor Porteous.
Yeah.
Not in the business papers. I'll just refer you. So I don't.
That was the motion that was circulated to all the councillors.
No, but sorry, councillors.
Anyway, let's just move on.
No. Well, there's been a
As
lot.
I said, more heat than light.
Sorry, if I could just call the meeting to order, Councillor Cat, because I don't want there to be any confusion. I was speaking in reference to the proposed motion tabled in the business papers from councillors Stamoulis, Rescind, Porteous and De Cruz, which reads as follows. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it.
Really
Point
no
of
need.
order, Councillor Byrne. I do
making.
think you're trying to debate the matter.
Sorry, it reads as follows: that council find a more suitable location for the skate park. So that's now the primary motion with an additional couple of points, and the foreshadowed motion is my motion for readoption of the Leichhardt Park Master Plan. Just for clarity.
Very clear to me. As I said, more heat than light. And I said to you earlier today when we were discussing it, I really think that the positions between you and Councillor Porteous are so close that we're talking about a procedural point in relation to how this planning proposal will proceed. And really the outcome here is that, as Councillor Porteous says, there'll be more opportunity for input from the community on this project, both from proponents of the skate park, those who are concerned about its impacts, those who use the bay run. I think that's not a bad outcome, and it's one that I support. So look, I encourage all councillors to support the foreshadowed motion from Byrne and Macri, which is exactly the wording that was proposed by Rochelle tonight. And
point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Passos.
Yes, can I just raise an issue here? The children that you're concerned about and everyone concerned about this issue is sick and tired of putting up with labouring Greens.
Sorry, Councillor Passos, I'll call the meeting
on
to
each
order.
other.
Sorry, Councillor
This
Passos.
is purely political.
Councillor Passos, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll issue you your second warning. That was quite obviously an interjection. There was no reference to the code of meeting practice at all. So you've been warned a second time.
It was a point of order. It was not an interjection.
Well, it was an interjection because a point of order requires a reference to the code of meeting practice.
Well,
so
excuse me, there's no reference when other councillors make point of orders. They do not give a reference.
I'll call the meeting to order. I will adjourn the meeting if you continue to interject. You have been warned twice, so I'd prefer if we could just go on without further interjections. Councillor Kiat has the floor. I'll just ask the minute takers to update the clock. I'm not sure what time he was on, but it didn't sound like he had a long time to go. Councillor Kiat.
Look, I'll conclude by saying I'm very happy to support the skate park. I'm very hopeful that it will proceed, and as Mr. Richardson has just advised, this process will continue under Part 4, it will continue under an assessment process that's already been determined. There will be additional consultation elements, and I do believe that this will lead to the delivery of the skate park. and also the delivery of the skate park in a way that garners the broadest amount of community support and the best outcome.
Thanks very much, Councillor Catt. And just to clarify further, I wasn't referring to a campaign from you. I was referring to the campaign from La Montage, which is the main thing that's occurred between when you voted for the skate park to be approved 3 weeks ago and now, not to a campaign from any councillor. Okay, further discussion, councillors?
Chair.
Councillor Macri.
I've seconded the motion that you moved, but now the motion's changed. It keeps the skate park in the current location and basically takes the decision out of the hands of the councillors. So it's like everyone's washing their hands of this decision and handing it over to the staff to actually make it through this process, which isn't really a process. We're going to run a process, but we're not really going to use that process, so we can't use that process. It's sounding a little bit convoluted to me, and I'm really got concerns of it. So I'm withdrawing my name from your foreshadowed motion, and I am urging Councillor Stamoulis to adopt the motion that I actually seconded with you to re-adopt the plan of management without the skate park in it. And as another point 4 in his motion, that's what I'll be urging him to do. Because I've got concerns that this will take us exactly where I think we are currently now. And you have to approve under the direction you've taken, under the SEP. So running a process, how does that engage when we've already got a lot of feedback, which is pushing back on this location? And I've raised safety concerns.
Okay, so there's a number of questions there that Councillor Macri's raised. So I'll just ask whether under the proposal that council officers drafted and provided to Councillor Porteous, which I've now incorporated into the foreshadowed motion, would that require for the development application to be reported back to council?
No, councillor.
Okay, well, I'll move an amendment to specify that prior to the lodgement of any development application, the matter be reported back to council. Does that satisfy your concerns, Councillor Macri?
I don't want council to waste money on a location that I don't believe is really suitable. That's
fine. So we've addressed that issue. So I'll amend the foreshadowed motion to specify that the matter be reported.
Sorry,
Councillor
Burn.
I'll call the meeting to order. Councillor Macri is still withdrawing his support for the foreshadowed
I'm
motion.
happy to second your motion, Councillor Byrne.
Second the Byrne foreshadowed motion, and it's been amended to incorporate a requirement to report the DA back to the council. Although, as we've discovered, even if it got approved, there'd be a rescission motion that would be lodged here not long afterwards in all likelihood anyway. So we'll just make absolutely certain that it will come to council for a vote. Further discussion, councillors, it's now 10:05. So if there's no one else who wishes to move
Sorry,
it.
I've got a question about that point. There is no lodgement. Can we clarify from the officers? There is no such thing as a lodgement because they're only, I'm not even sure what they're going to do because there's a SEP process.
Put that question to the
not
council.
a development application. It's just going to try and stimulate an application process. Could the officers comment on point 2?
I'll call the meeting to order. Sorry, Councillor De Cruz, I will warn you if you continue to interject after I've called the meeting to order. Councillor De Cruz has asserted that there would be no lodgement process for a development application, which would mean that point 2 of the foreshadowed motion was out of order. I'll just clarify with the officers. Does council lodge a development application if one is to be submitted?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the point I was trying to make earlier, which I obviously didn't make, is that you're not lodging a development application for the skate park. You're undertaking what's known as a Part 5 approval, and there is no such lodgement as such. It's possible, for example, that we could undertake that Part 5 assessment, the review of the environmental factors, which is what it's known as, and report that back to council once that assessment had been completed, but before works commenced, for example. But to Councillor Macri's point, it will be considerable time and expense in reporting and other matters that we wouldn't we wouldn't like to spend if council was of a mind to then not support it at the end of the day.
Fair point, especially given that we've now done 3 versions of this and spent several $100,000. Does that answer your question, Councillor De Cruz? So I'm happy to amend point 2 to read that the matter be reported back to council after the assessment, but it's of the same effect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's been amended. If there's no further discussion, I'll go to Councillor Stamoulis for his right of reply.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to accept the amendment from Councillor Macri because, yes, we do have other elements of the plan that need to get done and we can't stall those while we're finding a suitable location, which I expect could be done in a short amount of time. We could find that suitable location and submit it through the standard appropriate processes of council with maximum consultation. By simply that I cannot support the foreshadowed motion. It simply says the current location is in place. We know the community is strongly divided over the current location. Why on earth would we spend huge council time and resources assessing something that is absolutely bringing our community into major division, something that is against our tree canopy, tree protection, urban heat island policies? Why would we go through that enormous cost? Why would we not go through the much cheaper cost of identifying alternative locations and then submitting them through the appropriate process? Unfortunately, I believe that we are not following the process that our community wants. I think the foreshadowed motion hijacks this process. It is very, very unfortunate that it is doing that. It is simply going with the current location, and it is a shame that it's doing that. I would ask councillors to open up that process to our public who are gravely concerned about this, and to make a commitment that we bring this back early in the new year with a location for our public. I ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, I'll now put the Stamoulis motion, Stamoulis De Cruz motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have councillors Passis, Stamoulis, Macri, De Cruz. Councillor Steer, are you in support?
No.
And all those against, please raise your hands. I have councillors Hesse, Drury, McKenna, Lockie, Porteous, Iskander, Kiat, York, Steer, and myself. That has been defeated. I'll now put the Byrne Porteous foreshadowed motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. In support, I have councillors Hesse, Drury, McKenna, Lockie, Porteous, Iskander, Kiat, De Cruz, York, Steer, and myself. That has been carried. Councillor Macri, can I ask you to take over for the next item?
Yep, no worries, Chair.
Councillor Macri?
Yes.
Sorry to interject. I'm just thinking it's now after 10 o'clock and our GM mentioned earlier that we have some items in confidential section that need to be done before the end of the year. So perhaps if we should suspend standing orders at this point to go into confidential session to deal with those items.
I think we'll just run a few more matters through. Hopefully we can get through quick.
Can I second that? Can I second that motion to suspend standing orders in order to deal with the confidential motions that Pauline has moved?
I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, can you show your hands, please? That's, I can see Councillor Hesse, Councillor Jury, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Lockie, Councillor Skander, Councillor Kiat, Councillor York. Councillor Steer, are you in support of that? Councillor Steer?
No.
No? Okay. I'm only concerned, well, okay, I've got to take the vote. Those against, that would be the others, the other councillors that are against, Councillor Porteous, Councillor Stamoulis, Councillor Passis, and myself. Okay, that's lost. So I gather we'll move into confidential session.